everyone.
Hi, Max. How's it going?
Doing well. Hump day, you know, middle of the week.
I know. I was going to say that to Laura in the chat. I was going to say happy hump day, but I didn't know if people still say that.
Give everyone a minute to trickle in. Karen has a migraine tonight. So unfortunately, she will not be teaching. And even more unfortunately for you, that means you get to hear 1,000 puns around Git tonight as I teach that. So if anyone wants to keep track, feel free. Give everyone a minute to trickle in, and then we will get started. All right, so let's kick off with stand up. What was covered yesterday? What did you guys learn? CSS, good, Shaw. What about CSS? What CSS used for? What are a couple common CSS properties? Yep, selectors. And in those selectors, you put properties, classes are part of those selectors, IDs, yep. And so all of the selectors are tying your HTML and your CSS together, right? What about the properties of your CSS? What are some common properties that you guys learned? Yep, font. Font has a couple of them, right? You can do font family and font size, and you can do color with fonts. What else about CSS? Borders, yep, and borders are part of the box model. What are the other two properties of the box model other than the border? Actually, I was not thinking that, but yes, width and height are the innermost part of the box model. And then you have borders, and then there are two more properties with the box model. Think about spacing. What are the two properties around spacing? So you've got your padding, right? And your padding is how much breathing room you have. And then you have your margin, which is how far away are things going to be. So padding is going to be inside your border, right? And your margin is going to be outside your border. So oftentimes you'll be playing around with some spacing things and try your margin and you'll go, oh, that doesn't look quite right. And then you'll try it as padding and all of a sudden something will click and you go, oh yeah, that's what I wanted it to do. So think about padding as kind of being your interior spacing of how much breathing room should this have from the outer box as opposed to the margin, which is how far away should my content, my div, my whatever it is, be away from other things. Awesome. All right, what else did we learn thinking more about HTML? What did you guys learn about HTML? Maybe some common tags that you may use or the structure of HTML or anything like that. Yep, so you've got your head and your body and your footer. Footer is kind of the body and your head are the two most important parts, right? What's the head do? What's the head tell the browser?
The doc type, that it is HTML. There's some meta tags in there that help it read.
Yep,
what
exactly.
You're doing.
And Brandy said linking style sheets and metadata. Yeah, so all
Exactly.
of that is pulling in into the browser, telling the browser, hey, before you even render anything, before you go look at my body, I want to give you some information, right? This is a little heads up that's coming through. And in the second half of class tonight, we're gonna go through all of that. We're gonna create your HTML template from scratch, just so we can practice typing in that syntax and getting used to opening quotes and closing quotes and all of that kind of stuff. But then, of course, comes the body, right? And the body is everything that's going to show up. So the browser kind of ignores the head. It knows nothing's going to show up from the head, but it uses that information to render out the body. Also, what are some common tags that you may see in the body? What's probably the most common tag that you would see in the body? Image tag, header tag, p tag. Yeah, so that p tag is definitely what you would see a lot of. And then what's that other one?
Div.
The div, exactly. And so the div is kind of your generic container, right? Of, oh, I want to put some things in here. A div is like the most generic that you can get. So a p tag is going to tell you, hey, a paragraph of text is coming. A div is just going to say, hey, I would like some blob, some box to put my content in. And so that's, of course, what the div is for, is kind of that universal way to grab the blob.
So it's not just for looking at the code, it actually does something with the page itself. The div?
Yeah, so a div is just like any other HTML tag in that you can use it in a CSS selector to style it. And so divs are often used when you want to throw a class or an ID on something that you then want to go into your CSS and style. You can wrap all of your content in a div and then be able to target that div with the CSS selector and then put some styling on it as well. Okay, anything else from yesterday that you guys want to recap? Okay, opening the floor up to anything that you saw in the news, anything that you have generic questions about. Yeah, so Shaw had a good question on where's the default position or best practice for linking CSS in the HTML external style sheet. So the order matters here, right? And that's the important thing to remember. Tonight's the first night where we're actually going to be pulling in two different style sheets. We're going to pull a style sheet in from Bootstrap. And Bootstrap is a framework that Caitlin will be covering a lot more in depth. But we're going to grab that and pull that in just to cover the grid system a little bit more and wrap our heads around that. What is often the case is that you will pull in Bootstrap and then go, well, I would like to override Bootstrap. I would like to, you know, instead of making this color blue, I would like to make it red. Or, oh, I don't necessarily like the padding that Bootstrap is coming in. And that's where the C part of CSS matters, right? Cascading style sheets, meaning that we can take our own style and cascade over the style that's coming in over Bootstrap. And we can go, no, Bootstrap, that's great. And I like all the stuff that you're doing, but I would like to override you and tell you that I would like my color to look like this. And so CSS loads in the order that you put it in your HTML. So whatever the last CSS sheet is going to be the one that overrides anything that comes before it. So common practice to put it into the head tag of your website. The order in the head tag, some people say it matters. You know, if you put your title up front and then your meta tags and then your link tags, some people say it doesn't matter. What does matter is the order of the link tags themselves, right? So if you put the title tag above your link or below your link, probably not the end of the world. But in terms of the order of the link tags themselves, that's what matters. The reason why you want to put it in your head, because you can take a link tag and throw it in your body, and the browser is going to look at it and be like, well, that's kind of weird, but I understand it's a link tag and it will still probably work for you. The reason why you want to put it up in your head is because you're telling the browser, hey, load my styles, right? I don't want you to go showing all of my HTML content before you've loaded my styles and understand what I want it to look like. And so that's why it's important to put it into the head tag. Less important about the order of it in the head tag, except for those other link tags that you may be pulling in. So great question there. Best practice, though, is to definitely use an external style sheet. You will see that React actually has a different way of handling styles, and React actually prefers to use inline styles. But they have a better or a different way of handling that. So that will change down the road. But for now, what you will find is that your HTML file will be huge if you put everything into the style tag right in the head. So generally consider best practice to have a external CSS sheet that you link out into. And like I said, when you get into React, Joey's going to show you different ways of getting those styles, into your code. But for right now, it's generally considered best practice to have an external CSS sheet. No problem. You guys got me back. If you ask a question, you're going to get a long-winded answer. All right. Other questions, other things that you saw in the news, anything that you'd like to bring up? Things that you hope we cover tonight? Yeah, Carolyn, great question. Difference between ID and class. So same purpose in that you want to give your HTML a place that you can hook your CSS into, right? So the CSS selectors are oftentimes either an ID or a class or a tag themselves, right? And so in CSS, and you can combine them, by the way, in your CSS. You can say, oh, I want to target all divs and all divs that have this class in particular. So you want to remember in CSS, an ID is going to be a pound sign or a number sign or a hashtag, whatever you call that symbol. And then a class is going to be a period. And so over on your HTML side, you have your IDs and you have your classes. The purist, and Latanya actually posted a good question over in the Slack channel about this, about, well, why have an ID and why have a class? The class is supposed to be anything that's reusable. So let's say that you are going to have several different links in your nav bar, and you would like the ability to style each one of them and say, I want every link to show up as red and I want them all to be bold. What you would do is you would put a class on each one of your A tags that you're using for your links, and you would say nav link in them. Then in your CSS, you could use that class and say nav link and put your font weight in there, put your coloring in there, put whatever. And the browser is going to say, oh, I know what nav link is from the CSS selector. I'm going to go take that and apply that to all the different classes of nav link that I see in my browser. An ID is meant to be unique. An ID is meant to say, look, I only am going to have one nav, right? I'm not going to have multiple nav bars on my page. I'm only going to have one. So at that point, you'll want to use an ID, and you could put the ID of nav in there, and that should be throughout your entire HTML document the only instance of nav that you have. People will go back and forth on, I always use classes. I don't want to ever break the ID rule, even if it's specific. There's no harm in using a class once as opposed to using an ID multiple times, which is strongly discouraged. And so everyone kind of gets into their own naming conventions. I only use IDs personally for page names because I know page names are going to be unique, and that's how I want to target them. And I reuse my style sheet across all different pages. And so I use the ID for the page, and then from there, I reuse my classes. Like I said, everyone handles them a little differently. It is best practice to say, if I'm going to be reusing this, I don't want to use an ID. I'm going to do a class. And then if it is something that I know is going to be unique, that's when I will use an ID. Brandy asked for sectioning divs with a header, body, and footer, excuse me. Yes, you can definitely section off things that way. It is generally considered best practice to use what is called a semantic HTML5 tag. So there are HTML5 tags out there called sections or articles or beyond your generic p tag or div. There are descriptive ways of saying, hey, this is a footer, right? So instead of saying div class equals footer or div ID equals footer, I'm just going to use this tag called footer. And what that's going to do is it's going to help SEO be able to recognize, oh, this bottom page, this bottom bar, instead of it just being a generic div, I'm actually going to call this footer so the browser knows and the SEO knows what kind of content is going into this. Isn't going to impact the way anything looks on the page. It is still going to be treated like a generic div would, but you're just labeling it for the browser. So the browser and SEO scrapers and bots and Google can go in and know what kind of content is going in there. In answering your question about Flexbox and or columns, we're going to cover both of those tonight. So what we're going to do is we're going to make the same nav bar two different ways. We're first going to get started with Flex and a great resource called Flexbox Froggy. We're going to go through a couple of those and figure out what the different Flex properties are and how we can get content to move around on our website. From there, we won't complete all of those exercises. I'll leave a couple for you guys to do for homework. And what we're going to do is we're going to get our nav bar up and working. And so we're going to get those sections to show up. And we're going to throw columns out the window. We're going to say, to the hell with columns. Let's talk about, I want this spacing. Let's get that spacing to work. Then we are going to save that, start all over from scratch again, so we can have a little bit more practice with getting our feet wet with creating files, linking to style sheets, going through all of that. We're going to start from scratch and we're going to use the grid system. So we're going to talk about how we pull in Bootstrap and how we reference an external style sheet. So one that's not on our computer, but one that's already out on the internet. We're going to talk about some classes that Bootstrap has built in. And then we're going to use columns within Bootstrap to lay out that same exact nav bar. And then from there, we're going to talk a little bit about how we can cascade over the Bootstrap styling and still use concepts of Flex, right? And so the reason why we teach you guys these basic CSS principles that we'll be covering a lot more next week as well is that Bootstrap is not the silver bullet. You can accomplish a lot with Bootstrap, but a lot of people will use Bootstrap as their starting point, right? They'll go, I just want to get my site out on the internet. I want it to kind of look pretty, but it's going to look kind of generic. And then from there, you can use all of these concepts that you're learning, Flexbox and your margin and your border and colors and fonts, and override or cascade on top of Bootstrap to kind of tweak the site to make it look the way you want it to. So definitely going to do a deeper dive into Flex tonight. And we're also going to revisit that column system and figure out how those columns work. Carolyn, you asked if IDs in classes can be nested. In HTML, absolutely. You can nest IDs in classes several levels deep. And then in CSS, you can start chaining those selectors together to say, I would like to target this at the top, but keep on kind of going down through the parent down to the several levels of children to get this specific component. And then that's what I want to compare my styling on. In CSS alone, you cannot nest in the curly braces, right? So in CSS, you can't have a selector and then have some curly braces and then have another selector underneath it. That is why there's a very popular framework called Sass, S-A-S-S. You also may see SCSS. And what that allows you to do is get a little bit more flexible with your CSS so you can nest things several levels deep. We won't be doing a deep dive into Sass, especially not tonight. But there are these like level ups that you can do on CSS that give you more flexibility with it.
Can you nest them within each other? In other words, the two different ones, like ID inside class?
In HTML, yes.
So for not just nesting classes within classes or IDs within IDs, but just like any, okay,
You can
but only in
intermix them.
HTML.
You can intermix them to your heart's content. You can go as deep down as you want. You can have as many divs with classes nested in as many divs with IDs. The only rule, of course, that you want to be careful with there is not reusing that ID. But you're going to see tonight how we approach that nav bar and how I break that up and how we break it up maybe a little differently with columns than we will with Flexbox. Carolyn, stick around after tonight and I will help you with InVision, where you want to make sure that we get you up to speed there. And Caitlin threw a note out in the channel about preprocessors and Sass. And that is coming up in her module in 3 weeks. Module 3 is split you're going to have 3 different instructors in module 3. Caitlin will be in for the second week of module 3, and we'll get you up and running with Bootstrap and kind of how do we take these sites that we're laying out that like we're making progress on them, but we want to speed up a little bit, right? We want to figure out how do we make something pretty. And so that is what module 3 is about. And Carolyn, using Figma is also completely fine. We don't have any specific assignments with InVision right now. So if you find that when we start working on your capstone, which I know is a little ways away, if you find that you are able to get your ideas out better onto a whiteboard or onto a notebook, or you use some other software, you could even use Microsoft Paint for all I care if you figure out how to install Windows on your computer. However you can get your ideas out for your wireframes, that's what matters. Okay, any other questions? Okay, so we are going to start with Git. So the important thing to remember about Git is that you will royally get lost unless you understand what you are trying to do before you do it. So Git has all of these vocabulary terms. And so once you get your head around the vocabulary, it's much easier to not get lost with Git. So give me 1 second. I'm going to pull up some slides that I have. Okay. We're going to see what monitor. Of course, Keynote would like to be a pain about going full screen, and they would like to take all 3 monitors from me, those greedy app developers. Aha, I tricked them. Okay, here we go. Okay. Everyone see a white rectangle with a blue rectangle in it? Cool. All right. So 2 concepts that you want to keep in mind with Git. Your code is in 2 different places. It is local, meaning that it's a copy on your computer. All the work that you're doing on these files in your Git repository. And by the way, I've got a vocab sheet that Karen typed up that I will send along. Everything you're doing in your Git repository, which is just a special name for a Git folder, is local. right? And so what you're going to do is you're going to work with all of these files and somehow get them up to the remote. And so remote is the other place your files can be. So now let's talk a little bit about the process between that. You're going to be working on your files, right? That's kind of your first line defense. Whenever you make a change to them, you're in your working area. Then you have your staging area, right? Your staging area is kind of the middleman between what you're working on and what gets committed to your local repository. So there are our action verbs to get between working, staging, and local. And then finally, on your remote, you have your remote repository, right? And that's just acting as kind of a copy of your local repository. So what we do is we open up a file, right? And we create that file, and it's in our Git repository, which, by the way, we're going to go over all of this as I screen share through creating the repository and all of that. But we're working on some files, right? We're going to make a change to a file. Oh, I'm sorry. We're going to start by cloning. Cloning means I already have my remote repository, and I would like to clone it down to my computer so I have a local repository. And in fact, you guys have already done this step with that classroom repo, right? We cloned the remote that's sitting up at GitHub all the way down to our local repository, and now we're able to start working on it. So I pop open a file, I make some changes to it, and what I do is I add those changes to my staging, right? I'm getting ready to do something with them. So I'm saying, hey, these files that I've changed, I would like to add them to my staging area. From there, after you get your files added, you commit them into your repository, right? And so a commit, think about that as a strong action verb. You're really committing, you're saving it in there. So when you're working on the files, Git's like, yeah, man, do whatever you want. I don't care. But when you're telling it, hey, I'm getting ready to commit here, you need to tell it what files you want to commit in. Oh, I changed these 2 files, but I really only want this one to be saved in. So we are going to add those files, which moves it into the staging area. And from there, we are going to commit them into our local repository, right? So there's no skipping these steps. If we want to get something into our remote repository, we can't just rush over something and go, oh, I'll just commit it, because you have to tell it what you would like to commit. And that's how we add to the commit. Okay, so we've got it committed on our local repository. We now want to send that up to remote. Anyone take a guess at how we do that? What's the word to get it up to the remote?
Not get, go.
We're going to pull first, right? And so that was a little trick. Why do we pull instead of we push? Because the remote is always right. When we're working on with a team of developers, which is, by the way, the primary reason we are using a system like Git, so that we can all be working on the same code together without stepping on each other's toes. And so before we can push, we need to pull. And the reasoning behind that is there may be changes up on the server, and I don't want to overwrite those changes. I would much rather overwrite things on my local computer before I'm able to overwrite things up on the server. So what we do before we send up our code is we pull, and we say, yoo-hoo, GitHub, is there anything new up on the server? Did someone else send some code up? Did they beat me to getting code in? And so you pull down those changes. And once you have those changes in your local repository, now you're able to push, right? So Git, the entire life cycle of Git is all about adding areas to your staging area, committing them to your local repository, being able to pull some code changes down, and then being able to push your code changes up. And those code changes are manifested as commits. So there's one more step here, and that's the ability to check out. So there are times that multiple people are working on multiple things in the repository, right? I might be working on adding the nav bar and someone else may be working on the footer, right? And so there's this notion of branches, and we're not going to go too far into branches because you guys are all focused on your own code. So we're going to create separate repositories for all of us so that when you send code up to that repository, you're not getting messages from someone else saying, no, you need to pull their changes before you can push your own. But this notion of checkout is super important because your local repository can have multiple different iterations of this code in what is called branches. And so if we want to switch branches, what we are able to do is go to the local repository and check out some code. And that checkout is going to say, oh, we've got multiple different files over here, but when you check out, what you're doing is you're basically pulling that version from your repository and splatting it into your working area and saying, okay, now I can work on these files and I can go through the whole process again, right? I can make some changes to the files. I can add those files to my staging area. I can commit them and I can push them up after I, of course, pool to make sure there are no changes. Okay. Those are the concepts. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stick a picture of this into the Slack channel because I have learned the hard way that Zoom does not like to share files themselves. So I just put that into Slack in case anyone wants to reference it. So what we are going to do now is get to work in Git Kraken. So let's get cracking. Anyone? No? Sorry, the puns are required. Okay.
Max, did you put that in the CIC student C2 channel?
CIC student resources.
Oh, sorry. Okay, thank you.
And I tried to share my screen and it decided to share what I didn't tell it to. Can you guys see Git Kraken? It says open a repo, clone a repo, or do you see a bunch of trees?
No, we can see it.
Okay, Zoom is playing games on me. All right. So when you first open Git Kraken, you're going to get a bunch of pop-ups around signing in and accepting the terms and service. If you see anything that says trial, that's completely fine. They're not going to ask you for a credit card. When the trial expires, you are not going to lose any features. Git Kraken is a free program to use. They just give you all of these advanced features up front that we're not actually going to use. So I'm going to take a quick break and have everyone open Git Kraken now. If you do not have it downloaded, go ahead and download it. Make sure you go through the step of dragging it into your applications folder. Git Kraken is going to do all kinds of funny things on you if you run it from your downloads folder. So we definitely want to make sure that we've gone through, we've put Git Kraken in applications, and then we've opened Git Kraken from the applications folder. From there, you're going to get a bunch of different pop-ups. It's going to be in a different order. One of them is going to be a login screen. Go ahead and log in with GitHub. Do not create a new account. Log in with GitHub. Trust me, you will thank me later. After that, you may have to hit the I agree button. And eventually, you're going to end up on a screen that looks like this or is giving you options that say open a repo, clone a repo, start a local repo, options like that. So I'm going to shut up now and let people chime in, let you know if you're at this screen, if you're at a different spot.
I was still muted. So we open Git Kraken to start.
Yep, go ahead and open up Git Kraken. Make sure you're opening it from your applications folder.
Oh, from the bar in the bottom.
As long as that icon is pointing to your applications folder, then yes.
Probably want to double check on that. All right, thank you.
Lena made it to the screen. How about anyone else? Give me a thumbs up if you're there.
Almost.
Awesome.
When I get in, I'm just at my like profile page. Is there something I should click?
What are your options at your profile?
It just says account info, and then on the side, there's like purchase license, organizations, products, apps, developer tools, boards, referrals.
If you go to File and New Tab up at the top, does that get you to a screen that looks like mine?
No, it opened up a Google window. Oh, hold on, let me.
Yeah, so your menu bar is specific to whatever window is active. So if you click into the Git Kraken window, you'll notice the name in the top left of the menu bar changes to Git Kraken. Great question. Kyle asked, how do I know that I'm signed in using GitHub? If you click on your profile in the top left, let's see if manage profiles will pull it up for me. Come on. Kyle, you're going to get an error message on the next step if you're not signed into GitHub. So we will deal with it when we get there. All right, good to keep going.
Okay, so I have Git Kraken open and I'm trying to format the window, but that's another story. What do I do next?
You want to, have you signed in with GitHub yet?
No. Oh, there you go. Okay.
Okay.
Continue.
And Susan, no problem on not knowing if you're signed in with GitHub. I believe it's going to prompt you for that next step.
Yeah, it's got me.
And Caitlin just posted the vocab list from Karen, and that is in the CIC student C2 channel. So if vocab is helping you, feel free to pull that up as well.
Max, I'm still not there. For some reason, I just can't even get that menu for Git Kraken.
Can you share your screen?
Yes. Hold on, I have this other. Okay. All right, sorry, I just had to get it back up because I had the double screen. Okay, can you see it?
I can. So you're in the web version of Git Kraken? Oh, you are. Yes, you are. So we want to get Git Kraken downloaded.
Okay.
So if you just do a search kind of up in that top bar.
No, I have it. I have it here. I did download it. I went through the steps. So okay. I just opened the wrong thing. I apologize.
No problem. Okay. All right. So I'm going to keep. Go ahead.
I don't know if I'm signed into GitHub. I have Git Kraken up, but I don't.
Do you have an option to start a hosted repo?
Start a hosted.
Share my screen again.
Start a local repo?
Yeah, so 3 options down from that, it should say start a hosted repo and then say on GitHub.
Okay, I saw that and I clicked on that and let me see. Oops.
So we're actually all going to do this together. So what we're going to do, again, tonight, the first half of class is all about understanding what we're doing before we do it. And that is the only way to learn Git, because otherwise you get dropped in the workforce and people go, oh, we use Git, just go. And no one explains to you like why we're using Git, which is Git is the way that we're able to collaborate on code together, right? Git is not only a great way to back up your code, but it's a great way to manage your code. So when everyone's working on different sections of this app, we're not creating file conflicts all the time. So what we're going to do is we're going to have two repositories. We're going to have the classroom repository, and you guys aren't going to edit any code in that. And what that's going to allow you to do is pool that code. So when instructors put files in there, you guys can pool an updated copy of it and see all the file changes. We're going to practice that in a couple minutes. What we want to do is we're going to set up a new blank repository. And we're going to really set up two repositories, right? We're going to set up a local repository and a remote repository. Those are called the same exact thing, but the remote is going to live up at GitHub and the local is going to be on our computer. Once we get that created, we're going to move some files in that we created last night into our repository. And from there, we want to keep that repository very organized because that's going to be your repository that you use for the entire class. So again, we're going to have two local repositories. One of them is going to be the classroom code, and that's where all the instructors are going to put their code. And then you're also going to have your own repository, and your own repository is where you should be creating your new files. So when you see me working tonight, just be very conscious of what folder am I working in? And that's even at the VS Code level, right? Am I going to create my new files in the classroom? No, you don't want to do that. I want to create my files in this local repository that we're about to create. So what we're going to do is we're going to say start a hosted repo, and we're going to click on GitHub. Now at this point, up at the top right, it says account, and then I have some options here. So I'm going to click my name. Does everyone have an option for their GitHub username?
I don't.
Okay. Do you
Should
have
I
an
browse or?
Do you have an option to add an account?
I just see the blank, well, I have exactly what, no, I have name initialized in, default branch, all that kind of stuff.
So up at the, are you on GitHub? Does it say GitHub in the second column?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, connect to GitHub.
Connect to GitHub. That's what you want.
All right.
And so that's going to open up, to Carolyn's point, a window asking for authorization, and you want to sign into your GitHub account. If you have not created a GitHub account, you should go create that now. And once you get your password in, it's going to ask you to authorize. You may have to hit allow or authorize once or twice, and then it will say you're all set. You can close that window and go back to get cracking.
Max, I just
Yep.
had a quick question. So I set up my my GitHub account before this class when I was doing the prep work with a secondary Gmail account, not the one that I'm using for this class. Should I change it back for the purposes of the class, or?
Nope, you're good to use that email. We're going to set up our repository to be public anyway. So people, when you upload your code, people will be able to access it. One thing you do want to be careful is about not putting in actually, taking that back. We're going to set up your repository to be private. The reason why we're going to do that is later on, we're going to start using something called API keys. And API keys is basically saying is the password of how servers talk to other servers. And so in GitHub, you want to be really careful that you don't share that API key with other developers, because then they could go use it. So the access to the repository is not something, we just want to make sure that you guys have access to it. And then down the road, we may figure out how to make it public or split out into different repositories or go from there. But to just get started, the email that you're using for the class doesn't really matter what's on your GitHub.
Okay. And then the second part, what you were saying about the passwords, that's what happened with the SolarWinds issue, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. So API keys are the passwords of basically how one server or one computer talks to another computer. And when they become public, people who get access to them are able to access everything the computer is able to access. And that is when you run into some problems. Carolyn, do you want to share your screen and we'll figure out where you're at?
Someone's still sharing?
Oh,
It
that
won't
would be
let me?
me.
Fancy
Okay,
that, right?
go for it now.
Where'd it go? Nope. Hold on. Where?
Go ahead and share your whole desktop. And that's a good note for anyone who's sharing in the future.
Okay.
It's much easier for us to help you debug because we're going to be hopping through a lot of different programs while we're programming. So if you stop your share, Carolyn, you'll be able to reshare and then just pick desktop 1, and that's going to let us see what's on your screen. Okay, so let's back out of this. We're going to go back to Git Kraken. So down in the bottom, just click on the Git Kraken icon. Okay. Can you click, go ahead and type in your name and email address and hit Save Changes.
And should I pick a profile name?
Default profile is fine. Go ahead and hit Save Changes. And then I have read that checkbox over on the left. And I agree.
What
Okay,
am I
and then
doing
you're
to-
going to click on Start a Hosted Repo on GitHub.
Just right there at the top?
The third one down says
But I
on
need it-
GitHub.
But that heading, okay. So, start a hosted repo.
Underneath that, it says on GitHub. Go ahead and
Oh,
click on
excuse me.
GitHub.
Gotcha.
Okay, and then click on Account Select. And go ahead and click your GitHub username in there. Okay, and you're all caught up. You can stop sharing.
Do I have to save anything?
Nope, we're going to go through the next steps all together because I think you're all caught up.
Okay,
Max, I'm
thank
sorry.
you.
Can I share again just to make sure I'm where I'm supposed to be?
Yep, go ahead.
Hold on.
Oh,
I
okay.
just got to get back into Zoom here. Sorry.
Okay.
It's opening windows I don't want. Okay, fine. Back to meeting.
Latanya, you should be able to start sharing now. I just changed the sharing.
I'm getting like
options.
this splash screen that keeps coming up. I don't know why. Go away. All right. So I'm unshared now.
You are
Hey,
now.
There we go.
Yeah,
I
should be sharing.
I
at
keep
this
getting
point.
this main like screen, and I don't know what it is that pops up for Zoom, but Zoom is being naughty. All right.
All right, Latanya, you're all set. Just click on Exit Preferences up in the top left here.
Oh.
And now you can go to Start a Hosted Repo on GitHub. And go ahead and click on Account up here.
Oh, I love that little trick. Okay.
And now you're all caught up.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, I'm gonna start sharing again and we're gonna keep trucking forward here. Okay, so for my name, I'm going to call this CIC my code. I'm using dashes. You guys can use camel case if you want, whatever is more comfortable for you. I recommend that you avoid spaces because that will come back to bite you in a later module. So we are going, you can call this whatever you want. What you want to be able to do is differentiate this repository from the classroom repository, which is again where all the teacher code is going to go. So whatever you want to call this is completely fine. I'm going to drop down here and I'm going to make it private. The only reason we're making it private is making sure that you don't put a secure API key or anything like that in there accidentally and have it so the entire world can access it. So later down the line, we may revisit this and make it public, but for now, it's probably just a safer bet to make it private. We want to make sure this clone after init is checked. Basically, what we're doing there is we're saying, hey, go to GitHub, go make this repository for me. And after you make it, clone it down onto my computer so I can start working with it. From there, it's going to say, where do we want to clone to? So I'm going to click browse and I'm going to drop down to my desktop and I'm going to pop open the CIC folder that I have in here. Now in this CIC folder, you see this other folder in here that says Careers in Code Classroom Codebase. That's the repository we already cloned. So if you want to have a CIC folder on your desktop and then have the Classroom Codebase folder in there and your repository in there, completely fine to do that. If you would rather have both of those folders on your desktop, go ahead and do that. If you'd rather have those folders in your documents, go ahead and do that. It doesn't matter where we're putting it. What does matter is that we are consistently putting our code in there. So I'm going to say I want it in this CIC folder. And what it's going to do is once I'm done creating this repository, I'm going to have two folders in here. One for the code base, the classroom code base, and the other for that repository and folder that I'm about to create now. So I'm going to drop down here. This folder name is fine. Default branch name is fine. Git ignore, all of that is fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit create repository and clone. And it's going to work for a little bit. And it's going to then say opening repo. And then eventually I make it to this screen. Okay, so what did that just do? Two things. One, if I go look on my desktop at my CIC, you see I now have two folders, one of which is my code base and one which is CIC my code and just has this file in it called readme.md. Okay, that's one. So we've got that locally, but we also have that on our remote. And to prove it, I'm going to go to github.com. And I have all of these projects over on the left. If you don't, you may have to sign in. So go ahead and sign in if you're not signed in. And over on the left, if I click on, actually it's right here. You see it says Max Matthews, which is my GitHub username. And then it says CIC my code. So if we click on that, we see my README file and then the contents of it. I'm going to pause there. Questions from anyone?
Yes, it looks like Bentley and I don't know if anybody else got this, but this appears to be a private repo, C plans, closed repository. But then I also have this thing that says it's still cloning into that folder I picked.
How long ago did you guys download Git Kraken?
The day you gave us that assignment is when I did it. It was that day or the next day.
Oh, you know what, Max?
Yep.
We might have pro. Oh, you have trial. Let
Mine was on trial. Mine was on the pro, and then after that, it automatically went to the trial
It might have
after
been,
the 7 days.
it might be a pro feature to have a private repo. I don't know. I don't know why, but
I was able to do private repo, so I'm not sure.
oh,
And I'm on the same page as Max, and I was able to pull it up on GitHub.
I could not do anything because I'm trying to get my Get Kraken screen back up and it's forcing Zoom to sit on the top and it won't go away.
Carolyn, let me get through a couple more things, then I can help you at the break.
Awesome, thank you.
Latanya, can you share your screen at where you're stuck?
Yep, hold on one sec.
can people just give a thumbs up if they were able to successfully create that? I just want to take a show of hands.
Thumbs.
Thumbs. Show of thumbs. Oh, that reminds me of that Spy Kids movie. Remember, like the thumb guys? Do you remember that movie?
I do. It was a very weird movie, but I do remember that.
Okay.
I remember it too.
Latanya, you want to share your screen?
Oh, I thought I was. I mean, it says I'm sharing. Do you see it?
Oh, you know what? It's probably because I'm sorry. My bad. Okay, hit close repository. And if anyone got this, we're just going to make your repository public and we'll go from there. So if you go up to file in the top left and drop down to new tab and click on GitHub again. And this time when you create your repository, do all the same steps except make it public.
Okay. Okay, so just leave it as public. And then we didn't change anything else. That's it, right?
You got to give it a name.
Oh, that's right.
And it might yell at you if you use the exact same name.
Oh, okay.
But let's see what happens.
Okay.
Go ahead and hit create. Yeah, and it says that already
Okay.
exists. Yeah, if you could use a different name for now, that would, yeah, perfect. And then create. And now you're caught up.
Okay, let me stop sharing.
We have access to something called the GitHub Student Pack, which gets you access to all kinds of cool software. And one of them is access to the pro license of GitKraken, I believe. There are also other free options out there. I use one called Source Tree, and another popular one is GitHub Desktop. We are also going to go over how to use Git in VS Code. So all different ways of getting to Git, right? You basically have 3 ways. You can use Git with github.com, which is through the website, right? And you can interact with your code from there. You can get to Git from the terminal. Every command, every button that we click on tonight in Git, we can also run a terminal command to do that same exact thing. And then the third way we can interact with Git is through a user interface, right? And so the big 3 user interfaces with Git, at least on the Mac, are GitHub Desktop, Source Tree, and then this program called GitKraken. For my day-to-day Git operations, I actually use a program called Source Tree. We're using GitKraken because Karen was supposed to teach this class first. And that's what she uses at work. However, we are going to go through tonight another UI, which is Git within VS Code. And we're going to talk a little bit about how you can perform all those same operations that we're going to in GitKraken also in VS Code. So wherever you want to use Git is completely fine. You're not going to have someone yelling at you saying, like, why would you use Git over there? Because the systems are interoperable. Which means if one of the developers on your team uses Git in the terminal and you choose to use it in the UI, that's completely fine. They're not going to intermix. Okay.
Is there one
I'm sorry.
preference over the other? for using Git, or is it just like your preference on which one's the best for you?
It is entirely user preference, and you could start wars over which one you think is better. In fact, you will find that instructors throughout the whole program will have different ways of interacting with Git. I know a lot more of the hardcore developers are like, no, you do everything through the terminal. And like they insist that's the best way to use Git. I like using a UI because I like seeing the changes before I commit those changes or push those changes.
I can agree with that. So far, I like using VS Code the best, just because it's laid out differently and it's easier to see versus using it in the terminal. It's just like one color on the
Absolutely.
terminal, but my VS Code was multiple different colors, so it's easier to read. So I was just wondering.
Well, and there are some people who will use the terminal in VS Code to make their Git commits, even though Git has a UI built right into VS Code. So it really, really depends. But speaking of VS Code, I'm going to share my screen again. Okay, and so while we're in here, we can't really do much. And the reasoning for that is Git Kraken or any other Git UI is just for getting our code changes to and from our remote repository and into our local repository. But we haven't actually made any code changes yet. So we need to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to open VS Code. I'm going to use a quick pro tip here, which is Command and space. And then I'm just going to type in VS space code. And the first thing that should pop up is Visual Studio Code. And then I'm going to hit enter. And it's going to open VS Code, of course, on the wrong monitor, but it is going to open it for me.
Do you want us to open up a new VS Code, or are we still using the same one that we worked on with Karen yesterday for wireframes?
We're going to open a new folder anyway. So if you have something open, it's probably just going to pop open a new window for you.
Okay. But
So,
should we save this? Because she told us to save this for, well, we were supposed to do it today.
yeah, save it. And we're going to actually move some of that code into our repository. So what we're going to do is we've got to tell VS Code where to go. And so I'm going to go to File and down to Open. You can also, if you have this screen open, you can say Open Folder. And you'll notice they also say Clone Repository. So even VS Code is leading you on to Git as well. But because we've already cloned the repository, I'm going to go to Open Folder. And I'm going to go to my desktop and I'm going to open my CIC folder. And then I don't want the code base because that's the teacher files. I want to open up the CIC my code. And so I'm going to hit open there and it's going to pop open and give me my README file. Okay, so I want to create a new file. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to, no, I'm not. I'm going to go to File and I'm going to go down to New File. And in keeping with tradition, I'm going to say Hello World and hit Save. I hit Command S to save. You guys can go up to File Save if you're more comfortable doing that. And it's going to say, where do you want to save it? And I'm going to say, save it as something called myfile.txt. And so you'll find as developers, you start getting more comfortable with file extensions. .txt is probably the most basic of them all. It's saying, hey, this is text. And the computer recognizes that .txt and goes, all right, whatever you're putting in here is just going to be text. So I'm going to hit save there. And you notice up at the top, my tab now says myfile.txt, and I don't have a little save icon or a little circle, which means it is saved. So I'm going to hop back open to Git Kraken. And up at the top here, you see this thing that says WIP. That stands for work in progress. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that. And notice over on the right-hand side here, I'm going to blow this up so you guys can see it a little better. It says unstaged files. And then I've got my staged files, and I've got some stuff down here for the commit message. So let's go back and talk about this diagram for a second. We made that file change and we saved it and we were working on that file. We now need to add that file to our staging area before we can commit it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over here, and you see that little plus icon? Looks like add to me. So I'm going to add it. And now I'm going to click stage file, and that added it to my staging area. Right? And so now whatever is in my staged environment is what is going to get committed. You will frequently be committing several different files. It's not uncommon to commit just one file, but it is a lot more common to commit multiple files at once, which means you're going to stage multiple files as well. Okay, now down here, I have a summary and a description. So what happens is when you're committing all of these files, it's easy to forget what happened in that commit. So what you want to do is in the summary, give a little explanation of what you did. So this is normally going to say something like fixed bug that blah, 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 right? Or you're going to say added new feature that blah, 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 whatever it's going to be. For here, we're just going to say my first commit. And what we're going to do is we are going to commit changes to one file. So we've moved from our working directory, we added it to our staging, and now from our staging, we are committing it into our local repository. All right, we committed it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to hop over to Google Chrome or wherever you had GitHub open. I'm going to refresh. And it's not there. Who can tell me why it's not there?
You have to pull, then push.
You have to pull and then push. Exactly. We committed it to our local repository. Remote is a different copy of our repository. So we could go, oh, wrong one. Sorry. We could go into Gitkraken and hit push, and it would let us do that. The only reason it would let us do that, though, is because no one else has pushed up to my repository between the last time I push and this push. So you can get away with pushing, but proper Git etiquette is that we're going to pull first. And what it's going to say is pulled successfully, already up to date. And so it's saying, we went up to GitHub. We said, yo, GitHub, give us any new code. It pulled it down and it went, there is no new code for you. So we cleared that gate. So now we can push. And it's going to sync a little bit. And then it's going to say pushed successfully. And it says main to origin. That's about branches. We're not going to go too far into that. Okay, so now when we go over to our GitHub, I can refresh this page. And up pops my file. And I can open up my file and see the content that I put in there. So we're going to repeat this whole process 2 more times, and then we're going to take a break. So the first thing I'm going to do is show you that you can accomplish all of this in VS Code as well. So we're in here. I want to make some changes to my file. So I'm going to say Max is here. And if I save that, that is in my working directory, right? That is, I'm working on these files. Git's like, do whatever you want. Let me know when you're ready for me. So I need to tell it I'm ready. So over on the left here, you see this icon that has a circle at the bottom and 2 circles at the top. Almost looks like we're branching off from that bottom one, right? That's what that icon is showing you, is that Git is known for its ability to branch your code so you can have multiple features that you're working on all at once. But we're going to go ahead and click on that, and it's going to give me my changes over here. So what I'm going to do, this is my working directory. I need to now add that file to my staging. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hover over this little plus, and it says stage changes. So I'm going to click on that. And now all of a sudden, I've got a new dropdown that says staged changes. Okay, well, now I need to commit those changes. So in order to commit, I need a little message. So I'm going to put a little message in here. And instead of being cutesy and saying second commit, you want to have a descriptive commit message, because there are times that you want to go back into your code and what is called roll back your code to a previous version because something is broken. And so what Git is really good at is it's not overwriting your code, it's saving every change every time we make a commit so that we can see the history of the entire file. So it is almost a backup system in addition to being able to manage your code really well. So what I'm going to do is instead of saying second commit, I'm going to be descriptive and I'm going to say added name to my file. And I'm going to blow this up, hopefully, so you guys can see it a little better. Okay, so now I'm going to hit this little check mark. And that check mark says commit. So we're following these same exact steps. Doesn't matter if we're doing them in Gitkraken, doesn't matter if we're doing them right in VS Code. So I hit commit. Am I done? I have to
Pull.
pull. So in order to pull, I'm going to click on these little 3 dots here, and I'm going to drop down to pull. And it's going to give me that little bar up at the top, and then it's going to go away. And I know that that pull is complete. So now I'm going to go up, and now I'm going to push. Okay, and it's going to give me that little clock, and then that's going to disappear. And that means I know I'm done with Git. So I'm going to hop back over to GitHub. I'm going to refresh my file, and I see, hello world, Max is here. Okay, we're going to do one more iteration, and then I'll stop for a break. So I'm going to go back into my VS Code, and I'm going to say, I'm going to add one more change, and is getting fancy in the terminal. I'm going to save this, and I'm going to go up to terminal up at the top, and you notice my changes popped up over here because I still have Git open. What VS Code is doing for me is saying, I detected their changes there. Do you want to commit these? Do you want to get these into your repository? So I'm going to go to terminal up at the top and drop down to new terminal. And it's going to take its sweet time to open. And what do we remember about terminal and VS Code? What about the starting position? Instead of starting at our home folder, we're starting in our project folder. And so to prove that, I can run pwd, and you see what comes out is not just Max Matthews desktop CIC my code.
I can't see. It's too big.
So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to bump this out 1 or 2. Okay. So what's the first step in this is the 3rd time we've done it. What's the first step to get our changes from our working directory to our staging directory?
Clone.
No, so we already have our repository.
Oh, okay.
So we're not going to clone. We want to add. Exactly. So we are going to add, but we can't just say add because terminal's like, add what? I don't know what add means. So we have to say git, right?
Right.
And so now Git's like, all right, what do you want to do? And I'm going to say add. Okay. Now over here, when we click this plus icon, it knew exactly what we wanted to add, but the terminal is like, add what? And so what we need to tell it is add my, and then I'm going to hit tab, and it's going to autofill file.txt. And so we are telling Git to add our file. And now when I hit enter there, you notice over here in stage changes, my file jumped up to the top. This is just proving all of these systems are interoperable, meaning I can do, if I wanted to, I could say, I've had enough of the terminal, come over here and finish off the process. Okay, so now that I've added them, my files are in my staging directory, getting ready to commit them. So now I need to commit them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in git, and now instead of add, I'm going to tell it I'm ready to commit. And now I have to pass it my commit message. So in order to tell it, hey, I'm sending a message your way, I'm going to say -m. In -M, it goes, all right, great, you're sending me your message. What's your message? So I'm going to do a quote, and I'm going to say my last commit from the terminal. And I'm going to close my quote, and I'm going to hit enter. And what it's going to tell me is one file changed. I made one insertion and one deletion, which means I just edited that one line of code. So if you're editing multiple lines in your file, that's going to give you a little report out of what Git just witnessed that you changed. Okay, now I need to pull. So I am going to git pull, and I'm going to say origin. No, I'm not. I'm going to say I'm going to say git pull. Just git pull. And what it's going to do, oops, not pit pull, git pull. And what it's going to do is it's going to give me some warning, and it's going to say, hey, we would like some more information here, but it doesn't really matter because you're already up to date. And already up to date is what we care about there, right? And so now that we've pulled first, we are going to git push origin head, Caitlin.
Yes.
Okay, so it's saying, what do we want to push? And origin and head are two like reserved words in Git. When you're working with multiple branches, you're going to want to specify what branch you want to push it to. And that's what the origin and head are saying, or they're giving you a little more flexibility to tell it what you want to push up. Right now, because we're only working in one branch, we're just going to say origin and head, and those are kind of the master defaults for it to know, okay, these are just push up the thing that I'm working on at the moment. And so what it's going to do is it's going to say all of these fancy things like enumerating objects and delta compression and all kinds of stuff that Git does under the hood to make all of this work. And then at the very end, it's going to say to, and then it's going to have my GitHub URL. So what I'm able to do is go back to my GitHub, and I'm going to refresh.
Okay.
And what I see is Max is here and is getting fancy in the terminal. So the cool thing about Git is I can go back to my repository and I can click on all 4 of my commits. And we can basically go back in time and see my initial commit when I created the repository, my first commit, and added name to my file. So from there, I can go, oh, well, what was my first commit? I had some code in there I forgot about. So I'm going to click on my first commit, and what you see is hello world. And then you go, oh, no, it was the one after that. So I go to added name to my file, and all of a sudden I can see I deleted this line and added hello world, Max is here. And someone signed in to our Zoom account and booted my background. So I'm going to take a quick break, and I'm going to sign back into the account because I probably just lost access to host the meeting. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'll be back in 2 minutes. We'll take any questions, and then we will go on break. So if you're all caught up and don't have any questions, feel free to take a break now. Otherwise, I will be back in 2 minutes.
It looks like you're.
I'm back and have all the power again. Just what I need, power to go to my head. All right. Do we have any questions? Kyle, shoot.
I just missed what you typed or clicked on to get within Git Kraken to open VS Code, to type VS Code and get it to open within Git Kraken.
Oh, I just hit Command Space and typed in VS
Command
and then
space. Okay.
space code. And that's a quick way to open any application. It's called Spotlight Search, and it
Oh,
allows
that's
you
just
to.
Spotlight. Okay, so
Yeah.
I didn't need to open it through Git Kraken or anything. Okay,
Nope.
thanks.
The tie between all of those files is the folder, the Git repository that we created. So because we created that Git repository, anything that knows about Git is able to interwork with those files. So we don't have to specifically tell VS Code we're working with Git Kraken or vice versa, because we just have that folder open. Brielle.
So how do you open the terminal in VS Code? I struggled with that the other night, and I tried looking it up, and it says doing things like the control quote and stuff, but it's not opening up.
Yeah, so the easiest way is to go up to terminal up in the, I'm not sharing my screen. All the way up at the top of the screen, there's something that says terminal.
And so there's not anything in the VS Code window. Just going to the top is the easiest way.
Good question. I know that the control and the backtick or control and tilde. So like at the very top of your keyboard underneath the escape, if you do control and that should open the terminal. I've always gone up to the top and dropped down to new terminal. I don't think there are any icons.
The control tilde works too, but yeah, I was trying to look in the window about some way to open the terminal and I was struggling, so.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It's pretty common to only be able to get to certain computer functionality from the menu bar. So I wouldn't shy away from using that. Karen, shoot.
Yeah, I have an issue with the folder.
Okay.
Creating the folder, actually.
Okay. You've got a little echo going on, but that's all right. Go ahead and share your screen.
That better?
Yes, that is.
Okay, that was the other. That actually has my phone.
Okay. I'm gonna. If you guys don't want to stick around, I'll let's say break until 7:10. Give everyone a 15-minute break, and if you do want to hang around, that's completely fine as well. Okay, Karen. So go ahead and share your screen, and let's figure out what's going on.
Okay.
All right, so you're stuck in preferences. So go ahead and hit exit preferences in the top left. Top left of the window. So close out of that menu.
The little red thing.
Right. Oh, nope.
Oh, I closed it out totally, huh?
Yeah. So let's go open up Git Kraken from down here.
Okay, actually, I think I already had you. Well, I guess if I had it open, you would be able to see it, huh?
Yeah. So before you click on something, make sure that you are clicking on what I tell you to click on. So exit preferences. It literally says exit preferences right on the screen. Okay, so now that we're here, we're going to start a new repository on GitHub. All right, and now it's saying GitHub is not connected. So we've got to get our GitHub account working. So we're going to hit connect to GitHub. And connect to GitHub again. Okay, and continue authorization. And now, do you have a GitHub account already?
I should. I created one, but I don't know. Okay, so I just put my email in there.
If you have an account, try and put in your email and your password. If you don't remember the password, you might have to hit forgot password. And if you don't have an account, you're going to have to hit create an account.
I believe I have an account because I've been getting the like emails from them.
Okay, so then go ahead and try and sign in. Oh, sorry, did not mean to do that.
Oh, dang. Wait a minute. I may have used a hack upstate password. It's still not working. I so know I wrote a password for this. I just don't know what it was. I'm sorry.
It's okay. So go ahead and hit forgot password.
Okay.
And then hit send password reset email. And go ahead and head to your email.
Okay. I have it open right here on my phone.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I just saw your guys' messages about breakout rooms. I walked away for a minute. Brandy, do you still need help? And Latonia?
Set your password.
Yes, please.
Yes, okay. Oh, Brandy too. Do you all want to go together or you want to be separate?
I think that's fine. I mean, it's fine to me.
Okay. I'm gonna wait and see what Brandy says.
Caitlin, what are you helping them with specifically? Because maybe I could jump in and save Max some time.
I don't actually know yet.
Okay. Is it this? Yeah, see, I'm having trouble, like some of my windows and stuff wouldn't move. And it's like, I can't see what I'm doing if I can't get to the window. But now it's these techie things that are getting in the way.
Yeah,
So,
I can try.
getting behind her and behind her here.
Let me, oh, Max, I need co-host.
Okay.
Oops, sorry.
I made you co-host, and then when I signed back in, it probably took co-host away. There you go.
Yeah, I think it did. Thank you. Oh,
I'm
God.
sorry, Max is being temperamental about the password here.
Why don't you stop sharing your screen and I'll move on to the next person. And then once you get yourself signed in, I'll come back to you.
All righty.
All right. Who wants help next? Dominique?
I'll go.
Okay, yep.
In VS, I'll share with my screen. I got an error.
Okay.
And I was
Take
trying
a
to
look.
pull.
Not read from remote repository. Make sure. Okay, so let's click on the file.
Yeah, I don't know what I did.
The files over on the left. Yeah. You created the repository in Gitkraken, correct?
Oh, yes, I did.
All right, let's go to Gitkraken first, and then we'll work our way back to VS Code.
Okay.
So click on Exit Preferences in the top left. Okay, so you've got your 3 commits there. So let's try and push them from the Gitkraken side. So
Okay.
push kind of up at the top in the center.
You said push?
Yep.
You want me to do all 3 or the first push?
Doesn't matter. It's gonna push all of them.
Okay.
And that push was successful. So what that means is that your authorization or authentication for GitHub is working fine in Gitkraken, but is screwed up on your computer somehow.
Okay.
So let's quit VS Code and reopen it just in case something shook loose in Gitkraken that's going to let you push. And pop it back open. And go ahead and add a letter, something to the file and hit Command S. And now we're going to go over to Git on the left. Yep. And the little plus. Yep. And then go ahead and type in a message. And then the check mark up at the top. And then the 3 dots on the right. And then push. Stand by.
Okay.
I'm gonna copy and paste a terminal command to you in Slack. Over on the left side, max M down at the bottom. And just copy that whole line. That S is going to make you work for it.
Yeah, it is.
All right. And then go back to VS Code and go to click on the terminal tab, kind of dead center.
Right, that's all right here.
Yep, that works too. And then new terminal. And then paste in that code that I just sent you. I'm sorry, in the down here, just click down there.
Oh, okay.
And then paste. And then hit enter. Okay, now let's see if that shook something loose. So if we hit the 3 dots up at the top and go to push. And then open Git log. Okay, try that one more time. I think we got the just try the push.
The push, okay.
Anyone else stuck around this spot? Okay. So this is very much a part of being a developer. What I'm doing is I literally just went to Google and I typed in git at github.com permission denied public key. And the first thing that came up was a documentation from github.com. I was hoping not to have to go down the route of using an SSH key. I'm gonna have to circle back with you because the steps for fixing this are a little involved. Basically, what's happening is that the authentication in Git Kraken is working fine because you signed in GitHub right on their app. So they're like, we know you're good to go on your GitHub account. What's happening now is that VS Code is trying to use some GitHub authentication that it found laying around on your computer. And it's trying to use that to push up code. And GitHub's like, I don't know who you are. Like, you're not allowed to push to this. Like, get out of here. And so that's what you're getting around that issue. What GitHub uses in the background is something called SSH to verify your identity and all of that kind of stuff. So I will circle back with you. The good news is that we are done with Git for tonight, other than just pulling the repository and getting that up to date. So for the most part, and I don't think that pulling that should even require auth. So you should be fine for the rest of the class, but remind me at the end of class and we'll work through that.
All right. Yeah. And it just didn't want to fall behind later on if, yeah.
Yep. No, we'll definitely get that fixed tonight.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
See if I can stop sharing up here. Where am I?
Karen, you ready for me or should I go to Susan?
Oh, I'm ready. I got it open. I'm on the authorized Git Kraken page.
Okay. You want to share your screen? Because I think this will be a good recap for everyone.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so go ahead and hit authorize Axosoft. Axosoft is the makers of Git Kraken. Click one more time for me. Okay, and now you can go back to Git Kraken.
Back to Git. I'm on Git Kraken, right?
No, I'll open the Git Kraken app. So down there.
Oh, down here.
Okay. From here, we can hit exit preferences.
On this side, okay.
Okay. We're going to click on start a hosted repo on GitHub. Okay, we're going to go to account here and click on your username. And then we're going to click on browse. Oh yeah, you can type in a name. That's fine. Go ahead and type that like CIC, my code, or whatever you want to call it.
Oh, okay. CIC. Okay. You said browse?
Then, yep. And we're going to go to your desktop. And CIC. And then open down in the bottom. And go ahead and hit create repository and clone. Okay, so you've got your repository created. So what we're going to do is we're going to hop over to VS Code now. So go ahead and hit Command and space and type in VS and then space CODE.
How can I can never remember that when that command the thing to open up the spotlight.
Yep, Command and space. And actually try that one more time. I told you to type in the wrong thing. Sorry. Type in VI instead of VS. Command and space.
Okay, command.
And then type in VI. And now hit the down arrow because we want to open
out the S.
Well, just hit down because we want to open it from the applications instead of the downloads.
Okay.
And then just down once. We want the second one in the list, the one that says applications. Yep, go ahead and hit enter. On the one, yep, that one. Hit enter on that. Okay, we're going to go to File up at the top. And then down to Open. And then we are going to click on Desktop on the left. And CIC. And then CIC my code. And then go ahead and hit Open in the bottom right.
Okay. Something's covering, well, you guys are covering my screen. How can I can move it over, huh?
You can just hit the Enter button as well.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we're in here. So go ahead and open up readme.txt. And go ahead and click over here and get a cursor. And just type your name or hello or anything like that. Now hit Command S to save. Okay, and so now we want to go through the whole Git process. So we're going to hop over to source control over here. Yep. And what? Something's not right here. Let's quit VS Code, hit Command and Q, and hit Command space, and hit Enter. And Git not found, install it with Git path setting. Let's go to Finder in the bottom left. And go to Applications over here. And then scroll down to G. So just a little bit further.
Oh, damn.
You can grab the window over here and drag it out to be a little bigger. Okay, and let's open Git Kraken from there. I'm wondering how you got Git Kraken working, but not Git installed. Let's click on Download Git over here.
Here?
Yep. Try again.
Yeah, I was covering my screen again. Let me.
You can just close that window if it's in the way.
Okay, yeah, that makes more sense since I don't need it right now. So hit download Git.
Yes, download Git. Hit cancel on that. I'm a little. Let's click on Git Kraken here. You know what? Let me just. I'm going to request remote control.
Oh, okay.
And let me just see if I can get something shaken loose here. Can you hit allow on your screen? All right, let me quit this. Pop this open. Okay, so the problem was I think you opened Git Kraken from your downloads folder, and that caused a lot of problems. So you should never run an application from your downloads folder. You should always run an application from the application folder. So when you see something like this, you shouldn't ever double click on it to open it, and you should never take it and drag it down to your dock from here. What you should do is you should put it in your applications folder, and then once it's in your applications folder, open it from there. because it's almost like when it's in here, it's almost like you're running it off a CD. So instead of being able to save and make changes to your computer, it's like trying to save the information on a CD, and it's causing problems. And so that's why we want to drag it to applications before we're able to do anything with it.
Actually, that was what I did. So I don't know. I may have downloaded it again or something like that. I'm not really sure.
It's possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if we can get a commit working here. So let me commit page. First commit, and we're going to hit commit. Okay, that seemed to work. So I'm going to switch back to VS Code. I'm going to say second test, and I'm going to save. I'm going to pop open Git, and it's still not sure about me. Try this one more time. Oh, you know what the problem is? The problem is probably we never got through the terminal step of installing Git. Did we get brew install? We got brew.
Yeah, we got that.
So that was the problem is we had brew installed, but we didn't have brew. We didn't brew install Git.
Oh.
And that was part of the that was part of the VS Code saying, hey, you don't have Git installed. Was it was a little confused because we were trying to use Git and it couldn't find it.
Okay, because we didn't actually have to install it the other day when we used it.
We did, you just didn't get to that step.
Oh, no, I just didn't do it.
So it's gonna go through this. Once it says this is done, just click into this window and hit the enter button for me.
Okay.
And then you should, once it gets through that, you should be able to use Git in VS Code.
Okay.
All right.
Alrighty.
And if you have questions, we'll have time at the end of class as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. All right. Looks like we're getting people back. Let me see. Does anyone have any more questions before we get going? Give me a thumbs up if you got commits, at least a commit working and showing up in GitHub.
No commit working. Nothing is working.
Okay, so here's the good news.
Sorry.
I'm going to show one more Git feature, and then we are going to stop with Git and get back into code. I will try and squeeze all of this into 8 o'clock, so we can save the last 30 minutes for any questions. And if you guys are up and running, you guys can get out of here earlier. Otherwise, Caitlin and I will stay in breakout rooms, and we'll get you guys caught up and up to speed. The one last thing I wanted to show you. Let me share my screen. We are on this one. Close this out and this out. So I'm going to go into my VS Code, and I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to Open. And when I am opening, I'm going to go back to my desktop. I'm going to pop open my CIC directory. And this time, instead of opening my code, I'm going to pop open the classroom code base, right? And so in here, I have made some changes. I actually pushed some code up. And so when we open this, oh no, my answers, don't look. Okay, when I open this, if I pop open cohort 2, module 2, day 3, I have some files in here because I wrote them. But you guys don't, right? Because, I wrote them. So if we go over here to Git, it recognizes, hey, this is a Git repository because we cloned this initially. So I can go up to the top here and go down to pull. And so when I pull, it's going to show me the little clock and then it's going to be done. However, when you guys pull, it's going to go pull in those new files that I added to the repository. So if you go back to your files now and go to module 2, you'll find there may be a new folder in there called day 3, and day 3 may have some files in there as well. Now, if you can't get the pull to work, that's okay. We're not going to go through step by step now. We're going to go back to Codeland. We're going to cover getting your nav bar to work. We're going to talk about the HTML and CSS. I'm going to shoot for being done by 8 o'clock, and then we'll save the last 30 minutes for any issues, whether it's code side or in Git or whatever it may be. Sound good? Guys all excited? All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow the best practice that you guys are following, which is never create files or work on files within the CIC codebase folder. So in VS Code, I'm going to go back to File Open, and I am going to open my, I realize I'm on the wrong monitor here. Let me see if I can. I'm going to go back to my desktop. I'm going to go back to my CIC, and I'm going to open up CIC my code and hit open. Okay. And I'm going to try and get this positioned. My computer is like so sluggish because it is screen sharing. Okay, so I'm going to close this. I'm going to close this. I'm going to delete my file.txt because we're not working with it anymore. And before I write a single line of code, I'm going to try and be good about folders, right? So I'm going to right click and I'm going to say new folder. And instead of just calling it nav, right? Because how many different times are you going to probably create a nav bar over the course of this program? I'm going to call it module 2. Well, in module 2, how many different projects are we going to be working on module 2 between now and next week? So I'm going to create yet another folder, and I'm going to call it day 3. Okay. And now that I'm in day 3, now I'm going to create a final new file, and I'm going to call this, you guys want to start with Flexbox or Grid? Let's start with
Flexbox.
Flexbox. Okay. So we're going to do nav-flex, and I'm going to do .html. Okay, now Karen showed you the little dirty shortcut of if you hit Command and Tab, you get all of this mumbo jumbo, right? And this is all great, but I think it's important not to use these shortcuts at the beginning. So you get practice, well, for 2 reasons. 1, so you get practice typing the syntax. And 2, also so you guys know what all of it means, right? Because an employer will often ask that as an interview question. They'll give you this file and go, what does all of this do? And you go, well, nothing. There's nothing in the body tag. And you go, well, it obviously does something. Otherwise, it wouldn't be there, right? And so that's a common question for an employer to ask is, tell me what all of this stuff is doing. So what I prefer to do is to go through and do it myself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear all of this out, and I'm going to start with my doc type. So I'm going to type my arrow. I'm going to type clear it all out. Okay, arrow exclamation point, and VS Code knows what I'm doing here, right? It's trying to help me. It's saying doc type. So I'm going to type in my doc type, and what doc type are we using?
HTML.
HTML. Great. Doc type is done. Doc type, you'll notice, is a weird tag because it's not a self-closing tag and it doesn't have a closing tag. It's kind of the odd one out there, right? Okay, so now notice what doc type we're working with. I'm saying, all right, I'm working with some HTML, and hey, the language going in here is all English. Okay, and VS Code automatically put my closing HTML tag in for me. So I'm going to ride with it. You notice indentation here is super important. Every time we have a tag, we're moving further to the right. You will find that that indentation is so important when you are debugging. I can't actually read unindented code. I've been writing code for over 15 years. It is like reading cursive to me, where like I can't read the code if it's not indented properly. So while it doesn't really matter to the computer, except for a couple different programming languages like Python, it is very important to the visual eye to make sure that you're following your indentation. So that's something that you'll improve on as you're coding and as you go through the curriculum, but just super important to get your indentation down from the get-go. Okay, what comes after our HTML tag?
Title tag.
The head. All right, and head is another tag, not self-closing. And we want to tell in the browser a couple things. The first thing we're going to do is the meta char set. And so what that is telling the browser is, hey, we're using UTF-8 here. UTF-8 is a form of Unicode, and that basically is saying that we can use non-text characters in here. Chinese is a good example of why we need Unicode support, because we may have letters that are not part of the typical English alphabet. Can anyone guess another kind of thing that Unicode supports that ASCII does not? Emojis. Awesome, Kyle. Great job there. So yeah, emojis are a common thing that we now need to support. And if you're only supporting ASCII, there's no way for the browser to know, hey, this symbol, these bits mean show up an emoji. So that's one of the reasons why we use UTF-8. All right, the next thing we are going to do is this is kind of a legacy tag. We're going to do another meta tag, and these are all self-closing tags because we've got that slash at the end, right? So we're going to say meta, and we're going to say HTTP equiv, and then XUA compatible. And the reason why we know this is legacy is because the content tag of that says IE equals edge. And basically, we are telling the oldest browser on the book that all developers hate with a passion, Internet Explorer, please try and render this with the latest version that you have. IE is old, it's outdated, and even Microsoft has stopped supporting it at this point. But what this line does, it says, just try the best you can with my code, try and use the latest features. Now we say meta name equals viewport. The viewport is the window around where all of your code runs. And so what we do is when we pass in the content, we say width equals device width. And what this opens us up to is being able to use responsive web design, which means your website may come up different on a mobile screen than it will on the desktop. And so what we have to do is we have to tell it all the way up at the head before we even start rendering CSS, hey, HTML, hey, browser, tell my CSS some information so we're able to make responsive code. So when we say width equals device width, we're saying, hey, we would like to know the width of the device that you're loading on, because we can then use that information in our CSS to make things show up differently. The other thing that we do is we say initial scale is equal to 1. And what that allows us to do is zoom the page in or out. Some devices, especially older mobile devices, would go, oh, you're loading a desktop web page, so we'll blow it up on you. We'll make it so it's zoomed in and users can figure it out from there. So the initial scale is saying default it to 1, default it to 100%, and we'll worry about that later. Okay, so we've got all right, we've got one more to go. Anyone remember what it is? Arguably the most important one in the head.
Title.
Title. And title is important because that's what shows up in your tab. If you look at Chrome, when we open this file, all of your tabs up at the top all have names. That's pulling from the title. And title is kind of unique here so far because it's not a self-closing tag. We're putting the content in between our two tags. So we're going to call this nav flex. Now you notice this little dot up at the top that's trying to tell me I haven't saved. So as a developer, you get in the habit, just like when you're in Word, to constantly be hitting Command S whenever you finish a line or a section of code. Okay. I like to take the approach of just get everything onto the screen, right? Just throw it out there and figure out the styling first. So what I'm going to do is before I do anything, I've got to tell the browser, hey, I've got some content coming your way. What tag do I use for that?
Div.
Body.
Body. So before I can even do a div, I've got to have my body set up. And so I mistyped something there, and you notice I didn't get the closing tag. So before I do anything, I want to make sure that closing tag is there, and I want to make sure this lines up. So when you guys look at this code, you see how this is all easy to read. You can all tell, oh, these are the 4 tags that are in the head. Look what happens when I start putting all of this over. May not seem like much, but you see how your eye just struggles to read that? That is why your indentation is so important. Because if it would be hard to tell, my head tag just went missing, right? Right now, it's kind of hard to see that I don't have a head tag. If I go and indent this stuff back over, now all of a sudden it's much easier to see, wait, what's going on here? Oh, I'm missing my head tag, my closing head tag. So I'm going to put that back in. Okay, now we're good to go. So I'm going to pop open our wireframe. Hopefully.
Hi, I'm back.
Welcome. We're writing
Kate,
some HTML.
how do you spell that again? Okay.
Give me 1 second. I want to pull up our wireframe.
Are you in Bootstrap?
Not yet. We're
Okay.
doing Flex first, and then we'll do Bootstrap second.
Okay.
And then I'm going to give you guys your homework assignments.
Homework. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
So I'm going into the classroom. I'm going to classwork. I am pulling up module 2. No, of course it's not in here. Okay, I'm going to Slack, and I'm going to scrolling. I'm scrolling. We're working on this, guys. I promise it will get better. We will get more organized. Okay, I'm opening up the link. Okay. So in our nav bar, we have 3 sections. 3 sections. Okay. We have our logo. We have our 3 links that we want to show up at the top, and we have our search and cart, right? So let's get started on that. So I'm just going to move this off to the side, and I'm going to create my 3 sections. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the nav tag. That nav tag is going to tell the browser, hey, we're putting nav in here. So if you need help trying to navigate through the site, you know that it's a nav tag. See how it's off? I'm going to highlight that and hit tab twice, and that's going to move me over so I'm at the right spot. So from here, I'm going to create my first tag, and I'm going to say div, and I'm just going to type in the word logo. All right. Now I'm going to open up another tag, and I'm going to just put something in there that says links. And then I'm going to do my final one, and I'm going to call it search. Okay, so I'm going to save that. I'm going to right click over here and I'm going to hit reveal in Finder. The other option that we have is we can hit open with, and it should, no, that was fail. I'm going to hit reveal in Finder, and that's going to pop open this window, and I can just double click on it and it's going to open up in Chrome for me. And this is what it looks like. All right, so how do we get that to look like this? Those three little letters.
Div ID.
CSS. All right. So let's hop back over here. And best practice we already covered tonight, based off of Shaw's question, was we want to create an external style sheet, right? So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to right click. I'm going to hit new file, and I'm going to call it navflex, and I'm going to do .css. Okay. Now I'm going to come over here. I'm going to say div color is blue, just to see what that looks like. I'm going to hop back over to Chrome. I'm going to refresh. It's not blue. Why isn't it blue?
You have to pull it.
Yes, and what Kyle said is you need to link it. So we need to go back to our head, and we need to do a link tag. Now, the link tag's like, all right, what kind of link tag is this? And we are going to say style sheet.
Right.
And now it is going to say, all right, where do you want me to look for that style sheet? And I'm going to say navflex.css. And it's a self-closing tag because all the information is in that link. So I'm going to hit save. I'm going to pop open Chrome. I'm going to refresh. And they're blue. All right, making progress. Okay, so now we need to get these things to show up as three separate sections. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop into back into my CSS. And I'm actually going to try and get fancy and see if it will let me. Come on. You were almost there. There we go. I'm going to open up. I grab this file at the top and just drug it to where I want it to be. And what that did is it allowed me to keep my HTML file open up here and still have access to my CSS file down here. So what I'm going to do, and that's optional, you guys don't have to do that. I actually prefer to work in multiple tabs, but for the purposes of teaching, it's helpful to have both up at the same time. Okay, so the first thing we are going to do is I'm going to delete this out, and I'm going to target my nav first. So I'm not doing period nav. I'm not doing hashtag nav. I'm just saying nav. And what that's going to do is that's going to target this right here. And so what it's going to do is it's going to say, all right, how do you want to display your nav? Normally, everything displays as a block, right? Which means those three things are just going to cascade down the screen. We're going to get fancy, and we're going to tell it, hey, we would like you to display a different way. We would like you to display using this method called flex. And so we're going to save that. We're going to go back to our Chrome. We're going to refresh. And all of a sudden, they're all right next to each other. Okay, that's better, but I'd like there to be some space between them, right? So we are going to use this property called align content. And how do we want to align the content? We want to align the content so there is space between the links. Okay, so we're going to save that. We're going to pop back over to here. We're going to refresh. And it did nothing. Well, we were pretty clear, right? Align the content and make it so there's space in between them. The problem is CSS doesn't know how big the things are. It goes, well, I don't know how big search is. I don't know how big links is. How am I supposed to know how much space to put in between them if I don't know what the things themselves, the size of the things are? And so what we do is we go, all right, smarty pants, Let's go back into here. And what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, go to our nav, and in our nav, look for the divs in our nav, right? So that little arrow is saying, go look inside, go look in the nested child and grab those divs. And from there, we're going to say the flex size of them is all 1. Spread them out evenly. Make all of them 1 so we get the equal spacing between them. So we're going to hit save here. Going to go back to Chrome. We're going to refresh. Whoa, we're making progress. We got space between them. All right, but if we look at this, we've got some things going on, right? The search over here is all the way on the right, and our logo is all the way on the left, and our links are in the center, right? So let's work on that. What we're going to do is we are going to go back to our code, and I need some way to tell it, hey, search, we want to get that on the right. But in our CSS, there's no real easy way to do that. We could use something that's called a child selector, where we say, pay attention to the third div, but that's really cumbersome, right? So we're going to go up here, and I'm going to put an ID on my div that has the word search in it, and I'm going to say ID search. Then I'm going to come back down to my code, and I'm going to do a hashtag, right? Because we're using the ID, and I'm going to type in search. And then I want to say text align, because that's what I want to move. I want to move the text, and I want to align that to the right. So I'm going to hit save. I'm going to go back to Chrome. I'm going to refresh. Didn't do anything. Anyone have a guess why it didn't do anything? Save, exactly. Good catch, Mel. I saved my CSS. I forgot to save my HTML. And we know that because that little dot is showing up there, right? So my CSS has the search information in it, but because I didn't save my HTML, the ID that I was selecting in my CSS just wasn't there. So I hit save there. I open up Chrome. All right, we got our text over on the right. We're making progress. All right, how do you think we get our text for our links to be in the center? Anyone want to take a stab at it?
Align equals center.
Exactly. So before we can align center, we've got to have some selector that we can hook into. So I'm going to come back up here. I'm going to do ID equals links. I'm going to save that. Then I'm going to come down into my CSS. I'm going to create a new one called links, and I'm going to text align. And I'm going to start typing in CEN, and VS Code is like, I know CSS like the back of my hand. I know you probably want center. So I can just hit tab there. Don't forget my semicolon, save, make sure my HTML is saved, come up over here. And there we go. I've got my links. So I'm going to go back to our wireframe. We're going to get a little fancier. I'm going to fly through columns, and then I'm going to give you your homework and help you guys like I promised. So over here, you notice our links are kind of nicely spaced out there, right? We're kind of breaking this out and saying, yeah, in this middle section, I would like home, shop, and about to show up. So I'm going to jump back over to my code. And in my links, I'm going to put a couple P tags. So I'm going to delete that. I'm going to do a P, and I'm going to do one for home. I'm going to do, let me get my indentation fixed here so we can read it. I'm going to do one for shop, and I'm going to do one for about. I'm going to save that. I'm going to pop open to my browser. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to refresh, and that's not what I wanted, right? So again, we're going to use Flex to the rescue. I'm going to hop into my links.
Is there a thing called inline?
There is a thing called inline, but because we're going Flex crazy tonight, we are actually going to use Flex. What inline would do is it would move all of those links up together so they were all right next to each other, but then there's no easy way to spread them out and get the spacing between them to be right.
They want to be together. Like a
Exactly.
huddle. Okay.
And so what we can do is we can use things like margin and padding to put space between them. But what happens when you're on a super big monitor? You don't want just 10 between all of them. You kind of just want them to naturally spread out, right? And so that's why we're using flex. Is we could put in margin numbers and get them to be where we want, but we want that flexibility, right? And that's where flex comes from, is take advantage of the size that you have and just lay things out the way we want. So what I'm going to do is we still want our text to be centered, but what I need to do is I need to tell my links, hey, we are going to display flex. And we are doing that because that div is going to default to displaying in block, right? So just like we did up in our nav, we're saying, hey, we want to get flexible here. We want to use some smart spacing. So we're going to come down and we are going to save and go back over here and refresh. And okay, it's kind of better, but we'd like some space around that, right? So again, we're going to come back in here and we're going to say align content. And we're going to say space, and VS Code's helping us out here. And we're going to say space around. And notice this space around is different than the space between, right? The space between is optimizing it to get as much space between it as possible. The space around is going to use some space on the left and some space in the center to spread everything out more evenly. All right, so we're going to come down here. We're going to refresh. And we ran into the same problem. Why isn't it putting any space around there? Because we need to tell the P tags, hey, you guys, you're all the same size. So we're going to come down here. We're going to go to our links, and we are going to target the P tags in our links. And we are going to say, hey, flex 1. So we save that. We refresh that. We go there. That is looking great. Why are they not all together in a line? Right? That's going to drive me crazy. Where is this coming from? I didn't tell it to go there. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to use the inspect tools that are built into Chrome. So I'm going to right click on this and I'm going to hit inspect. Now, DevTools by default open over here to the right. That drives me crazy. I don't know why. Maybe it's my OCD. I find the DevTools are much more useful if they're anchored to the bottom of your screen. So I click on, let me blow this up, hopefully. I click on the little 3-dot icons here. You shouldn't need to be in developer mode. You should be able to just right click anywhere on the white space and go down to inspect. So I click on the 3 dots over here by the close icon, and I click this third one. I personally like it docked to the bottom. Some people are crazy and like it detached and like it to be a completely separate window. Whatever works for you, that's completely fine. Like I said, I find it more useful at the bottom, but to each his own. Okay, so I'm gonna hover over my div and my logo, and it's going to show me that div, and it's going to show me the width of it and what flex is doing for me. Okay, so if I come down here and scroll down, it's showing me my margin, my border, my padding, and then the actual size that flex is calculating out for me. That's great. And you know what? My logo and my search are showing up where I want them to. Anyone have an idea of why my home, shop, and about are not where I want them to be? So flex isn't the problem here. It's actually something else that's causing it, because we're flexing logo and search, and those are showing up fine. And we're flexing home, shop, and about, and all of a sudden they came in from somewhere else. So Susan, you've got it right. That padding is coming in. So in order to find that padding, I'm going to click on the little arrow next to links and click on home. And you notice that orange space that's showing up at the top and the bottom? Well, when I go back up to logo, There's no orange showing up. So where's that coming from? If I come down here and scroll down, I've got a margin all of a sudden. That margin is default on a P tag. P tags by default go, oh, you're working with a paragraph. Paragraphs should have some space above them and some space below them. We'll give you 15 pixels apart of margin on the top and bottom off on the house, no problem. You're like, oh, great. Well, CSS, you're kind of getting in my way. I don't want that. And so what I'm able to do is hop back over, not to get cracking, is to hop back over to my CSS and in my P tag, say margin dash top 0. And while we're at it, I don't want any bottom margin on that either, because that's going to cause problems down the line. So we're going to say margin dash top 0, margin bottom 0. We're going to refresh. And we've got our nav bar. And I'm going to zoom that back out. And that's what the nav bar would look like on my computer. So super tiny. But when we go look at what our mockup looked like, not bad, right? Okay. 7 minutes, ultra rapid fire, and then I'll leave it open for the rest of the class. All right, this is all great. There's an even more simple way of doing it. We wrote 24 lines of CSS here. Carolyn, good question. You could also use a span tag, and that would not have margins on the top or bottom. Carolyn asks, is there another tag you can use? However, most web developers are so sick of the default padding that comes with those elements. There is a file called reset.css that goes through every HTML element that is built into HTML and sets the margin and padding of them back to 0. So because it is a default on browsers, we're kind of locked into them being there, but a lot of developers will use the CSS file to reset everything back over, and so they can layer in whatever that they would like their margins and paddings to be. But a span tag would not have that padding around it. Okay, so we are going to practice using Git, right? Because Git is super helpful. If I come back to these files and add something to it, I want to be able to get back to this working version. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to commit. I'm going to add, I'm sorry, commit was the wrong word to use there. I'm going to add the 2 files I just created, which moved them from my working directory to my staging directory. And now up at the top, I'm going to type in my commit message of example nav using flex. And I'm going to hit my little check mark, which is going to commit it. And then I'm going to go up to the top and I'm going to push it. And I was bad. I should have pulled before I pushed, but you know, you can get away with it. Now, you guys can't see that because I just pushed that to my repository, my code repository, not to the classroom, which you guys all have access to because you've cloned it. Okay, I'm gonna hop back over here. I'm gonna close this out. I'm going to close this out and I'm gonna create 2 new files in day 3. I'm gonna call it navgrid.html, and I'm going to create another one called navgrid.css. Now, because I'm going super fast, I'm going to cheat and use the template. However, I would encourage you all to skip the template and get practice typing those tags. So I'm going to type in exclamation mark. Oh, nope. Going to be in my HTML file. I'm going to type exclamation mark and then tab. And I'm going to get all the goodies that I want. And I'm going to type in nav grid. Okay, before we even get started here, I want to go pull in Bootstrap. So in order to do that, I'm going to pop open grid and I'm going to go to the website getbootstrap.com. I'm going to hit the giant get started button. And then down here, they give you this nice link href that should look familiar to you. So I'm going to hit the little copy button there. I'm going to hop back over to my VS Code, and underneath my title, I'm just going to paste that. Now you'll notice the link and the href and the rel we're all familiar with. There are 2 more things in here that say integrity and cross origin. You guys don't have to worry about them now. It's basically a way for the browser to make sure what we loaded is what we expected to load. So those are some just additional security measures. Don't really need to worry about them right now. So we've got our link in here. And so again, I'm going to actually, let me see. Okay, so I'm going to do my nav tag like we did before, right? We're familiar with that. And now we're going to start using some classes that are built into Bootstrap. The first one is a row. So before we can put any columns in, we need to worry about our row. Okay, so we've got our row in place. Now we want a column, right? And so you're saying, Max, how do you know that class is called row and that class is called column? Well, if we go back to Bootstrap, over on the side here, we can pop into layout and go to grid. And in the grid, you're going to see some code here. They're going to say put everything in a container. We'll get to containers later, but they're saying div class row, and here are my columns. And what that code does is it shows me all of this. So without having to write any CSS, because Bootstrap, the gods at Bootstrap have already written all of that CSS for me, I'm able to just hook into all of their classes because I put this link in here and pulled in all of their CSS. So what I'm able to do is my first one, I'm going to say logo. Then I'm going to come down here. I'm going to make another div class equals call. And I'm going to call that, I'm going to put in my links. And I'm going to do another div class equals call. And I'm going to call that search. Okay. Gonna right click. I'm going to reveal in Finder. I'm gonna pop this open. And all of a sudden, I've got my logo, my links, and my search. And they're all evenly spread out. Well, that was fast. But you know, I want my text to be centered here. Well, we could go in and add our style sheet and center it. But Bootstrap is like, nah, you're good. People want to center their text all the time. So we made a class for you called text center. And we can find that in the Bootstrap documentation, but we're going to refresh here. All of a sudden, links is dead center. Well, I'd like my search to be at the end of that, right? So I'm going to go back into my code and I'm going to say, oh, put that text at the end. And hit save. I'm going to go back to Chrome and I'm going to refresh. And all of a sudden, I've got my text at the end. So what we could do is go into our code. And now we want to get our links to show up. Now here we've got two different options. We could go back to our flex, right? There's nothing saying we can't add a class in here called our links and go make our flex code work the exact same way that we did in our in the previous example. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, everything is 12, right? Let's go back to our mockup. Everything is 12, right? And so right now our design has this showing up as 2, this showing up as 2, and this showing up as 3. Right? And we've got some space in between. But what happened in our code was that Bootstrap looked at this and said, you gave me 3 columns, so I'm just going to evenly split it. So I'm going to look at this and I'm going to say, there are 4 columns here, there are 4 columns here, and there are 4 columns here. And so to make that a little easier to see, I'm just going to put a style tag on here and I'm going to say border 1px solid black. And I'm going to put that on all 3 of these and pop open this and we see our 3 little borders showing up there, right? Representing our 3 columns. But what I want to do is break this one up so it's not it's not 4 columns wide, it's 3 individual ones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop over here and I'm going to say this column, I want to be 4 wide. And this column, I also want to be 4 wide. I want those to stay the same width. But in here, I want you to be 1 wide. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to copy it 2 times. And I'm going to say 1 wide, 1 wide. And I'm going to say link. What did we do? We did home, shop, and about. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to refresh. And now, again, because everything is based off of 12, it went 4, 8, 9, 10, 11. So we can see our columns in there and see that we need to adjust our spacing somewhere. So the last thing I'll show you guys how to do, I promise, I know I said 8, I'm a little over. We can get flexible. We don't actually have to do everything in one grid. We can put a grid inside of a grid. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to back out this code and we're going to say, keep it 4 wide. And then in here, I want another row. And in that row, I'm going to put my column. And that column is going to say home. And this div class column is going to say shop. And this last one is going to say about. And I'm going to save that and come over here and refresh. And there it is. Okay, I just threw a lot at you guys. One question you may be asking yourselves, how do I know about all of those flex thingies? What are all of those properties? Could you give me a resource that uses frogs to move them around on lily pads? No, just me? Okay. Well, there is an awesome website called Flexbox Froggy, and it's flexboxfroggy.com. And this is kind of free code camp. If you guys have used free code camp, great. You'll fit right in here. If you haven't, you'll figure it out pretty quickly. I'm on level 24. There are 24 levels to do. I would encourage you guys to make it to level 24 if you can by this weekend. And what it's going to do is it's going to give you some properties and help you move that frog around, right? So it's telling you all of this information. And the first thing it's telling you about is justify content. And so what I'm going to do is my frog is my content, right? So I'm going to say justify my content. And it's telling me all of the places I can put my frog. So if I justify my content in the center, you notice my frog just moved to the center. Well, and if I want to shove him all the way at the end, I can flex to the end and he's now on the lily pad. So I just learned about justify content. So I'm going to hit next and it's going to take me on to the next thing that talks about other properties of justify content. And how can I get these frogs to line up on their right colors? So your homework for tonight is make some progress in Flexbox Froggy. By the end of the week, make it to at least level 23. And if you can get level 24, you have earned the title of Flexbox Master. For tonight, in addition to Flexbox Froggy, what I would like you guys to do is to create the 2 files that we created in class using the Bootstrap grid and also using Flexbox. Now, what you may say to yourself is, Max, that's great, but how could I ever catch up to that? Well, if you go to GitHub and look in the Careers in Code Classroom Codebase, again, not your code folder, you will be able to go to Cohort 2, Module 2, Day 3, and I've put some files in here for you. And one of them is the nav grid. And you can see I'm using columns in here and have all of this. So there is something called your digital fingerprint. And your digital fingerprint is what identifies you as a developer. Little things like, do you put a space between your closing tag or don't you? Did you indent using tabs or spaces? What did you call those links, right? And so it's really funny because I can open up a file from anyone on my team and see it just by instinct and know who was the last person to edit that file. So you could go in, you could copy and paste this, you could change a thing, and you could submit that as your assignment, right? But this isn't about grading. This isn't about did you do it or did you not do it. This is about getting practice, writing your code, just getting the hang of it, right? So what I would encourage you guys to do is try and take a stab at it by watching the YouTube video, right? Fast forward to the last break, hit play, pause me when I type something, go try and type that yourself, right? And if you're super stuck and you're ready to throw the computer out the window, then go to the GitHub repo and look, and don't just copy and paste that line of code into your code. Actually look at that code and go letter by letter to figure out why something is working in my repository, but not working on your computer. And once you finally get to that point of like, all right, I got it working, upload that to Google Classroom. If you haven't completely gotten it working, still upload it to Google Classroom and add a note in there. I think they call it a private comment that goes, I got stuck here. Because what I can do is I can go through, give you a little tip, and you can always resubmit the assignment. So when you submit your assignment, it's not your final grade. It's not something where you'll never be able to redo it. It's just a chance for us to touch base with you and see where you guys are at. And so once we're able to do that, we can provide you feedback and make sure that you're making progress and have the resources that you need. Okay, I went 9 minutes over. I'm going to shut up now and give anyone a chance to ask questions, either about Git or about the code stuff. I know I went fast. I know Karen's coming back tomorrow, so I wanted to cover everything that I needed to cover. So, Brielle, question.
So I just was wondering about the Git Bootstrap. When you went there very quickly, did you actually download Bootstrap onto your computer or?
No download. All I did was I copied that link tag. And so let me reshare this and go over to here. So let me back out to their homepage and I clicked get started, and they gave me this link href. And so what I did is I copied that and I hopped back over to my code and I just pasted that into my head. And so what that did is it said, oh, href, I know what an href is. And instead of pulling in nav-grid.css, it went, oh, go to this URL and pull in bootstrap.css. And so if we actually copy and paste this into the browser, you can see it's CSS, right? There's nothing shocking here. But if we start scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, that's a lot of CSS here. And you can see I can scroll all the way down and there is a lot of CSS in here. So all of that CSS is powering Bootstrap. And so what Caitlin is going to do with you is go through the Bootstrap components and start talking about how you don't have to design your own nav bar. You can just use a generic nav bar and they'll put in all of the formatting for you and design the borders and get the links looking right and all of that kind of stuff. You can go, oh, I would like to show a table, and tables don't look great, but Bootstrap goes, we made a table that's pretty for you. As long as you use these classes, you're able to use our table and make it show up pretty. And so all of this CSS is what is getting loaded in when we put those couple lines of code in for just this link and the href.
No, thank you. That's what I needed to know.
Absolutely. Good question. Other questions? Yep. That website is getbootstrap.com. It is worth memorizing that, not for just the being able to go to it and grab that link tag and start to use it, but because of the documentation. It took me years of using Bootstrap to remember, oh, row and col, and I can do a col-4 and have that show up, right? There are probably 30 different components and other helpful text classes like text-center and text-end, and all of those little things takes years and years to memorize, but you don't have to. You can use that Get Bootstrap website, and they're going to give you all the documentation and describe to you how you can use that with code samples and with paragraphs and with visuals. And documentation is your friend, right? Like I said, if you go into an interview and they go, you can't use Google, you can't use documentation, I walk out. Because to this day, if I want to get a table to show up in Bootstrap, there's no way I'm pulling that out of my memory. I'm going over to Bootstrap, I'm copying the code, I'm pasting it in, and I'm making the changes to make the things in the table show up that I want to show up. Other questions? Who here feels like they just got hit with a fire hose? Good, doing my job. Welcome to the boot camp.
The pain of learning. I hope I didn't inflict this on my students when I was a teacher. I'm just kidding. You're awesome. So the YouTube video probably won't go up until tomorrow morning, just because Zoom takes its sweet time to process a 3-hour recording. And then once Zoom processes it, we have to upload it over at YouTube. And then once YouTube processes it, that's when we can finally send it out. With that said, you have access to the classroom Git repo. And so you have the final code over there. But with homework, even if you see a due date, chances are the instructors are not going to grade it until that weekend. So don't worry about like, I need to have all of this done, by tomorrow, I need to have this done, because what Karen is able to do is go into that repository and go, I know here's what they did yesterday. Now we can pick up from this point, even if you guys don't have that code finished. So Karen, because I committed it to the repository, now has access to all of the code that I covered tonight, and you guys do too. And so that's why Git is so important, is being able to collaborate on your code is really the core reason Git exists. And it's one of those things that I went through college for IT, and I looked through the entire computer science curriculum, and nowhere did they mention Git. Git is used by 99% of every Fortune 500 company. Git is the dominant player. So when I'm mentioning alternatives, when I'm mentioning SourceTree, and I'm mentioning GitHub Desktop, and I'm mentioning Bitbucket and GitLab and GitHub, they all use Git. Git is that open source technology. And because it's open source, if you want to know how Git is working, you can go open the Git repo for Git and actually see line by line what happens when you run a commit. What happens when you add something? What's staging look like? How does that all work under the hood? You can see every line of all of that. And so that is why so many companies can trust using Git, because they have the ability to see what's happening under the hood. And so Git is one of those things that when you're coding on your own, it may not seem super important, but when you're so frustrated and you go, I just want to go back to when my code was working, that is when you're going to want to be using Git, right? Commit often is a term that you will hear very frequently. If you're committing, that means that there is a checkpoint that you can roll your code back to and get back to that point where it was working. You can almost reset back to that code. Reset's another Git term where you can just say,
anything that I was working on, just get rid of it. Any of the files I was working on, just throw it out the window, reset me back to my last commit. And you can do that and get back to what was working last. So Git is something that will kind of go back into the shadows. We probably won't be using it much in the curriculum for other than just pulling down the classroom code base. But when you get back into working on your capstones, I would highly encourage you set up a new repository for that, or put it in a new folder in the repository you just created, and remember to commit when you finish something. Because in addition to being able to get back to that point when you change that file and realize you made a mistake, you can also push it up to GitHub. So if your computer spontaneously combusts, all of your code is now backed up at GitHub as well. Other questions?
Yeah, I have one. I'm sorry, Dominique had her hand up already.
I'm going to go to Dominique first, and then I'll come back to you, Caroline.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
Well, mine's gonna take a while because I still have the issue with the authorization for Git, Kraken and VS. So,
Caitlin, how proficient are you with SSH keys in GitHub? Okay, we'll come back to you, Dominique.
yeah, thank you.
Caroline, you want to ask your question?
Sure. I have in my Finder in the desktop, I have my folder CIC my code with the README MD and the test HTML. That is in a folder that we just labeled CIC code just to get through it, and I wanted to rename it. Should that be in another folder, or should it just be at the same level as my HTML practice and my wireframe practice folders?
So I can't tell you the answer, but I can give you a suggestion.
Okay.
So what I would suggest is you have one folder on your desktop called CIC. In CIC, you should have two folders, one that says classroom code base, it's got a long name, but it should say classroom in it, and then another one that is for my code. In my code, I would have folders for every module. And then in those module folders, I would have another folder for every day.
Yeah, this isn't the classroom stuff. This is what we worked on tonight.
Yeah, and I
For
would
the prep?
organize that content just like you organize, just like the classroom repo is organized. So I would create a new folder called module 2, and I would drag any code that you already have into the module 2 folder.
Okay. If Caitlin was helping me and we created this other folder and I already had one in there.
You want to share your screen and we can work through it?
Yes.
Any other quick questions or? Okay, so on your desktop, you've got CIC code, you've got your practice and your wireframe. I'm going to switch us into a different view because while this view is, is a perfectly fine one, I find the column view to be more helpful.
Okay.
So we're going to click on view up at the top there.
Oh, I got to do that, don't I?
And then drop to columns.
Yep.
Okay. So let's open up CIC code. Okay, and now you've got my code in here, and it doesn't look like you have the classroom repo. Do you have that lurking anywhere else on your computer?
I have no idea.
Okay. Let's just take a quick peek in documents to make sure we don't end up duplicating lots of things. Nope, we do not have it in there either. Okay, so we're going to go back to your desktop, and we're going to open up CIC code. And we're going to open up CIC my code. And you've got some stuff in there.
Move you guys out of the way here. Sorry.
Okay.
All right.
So let's scroll back over to the left. the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get the classroom repo. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up terminal.
From the Finder?
You already have it in your doc.
Oh, okay. Hold on. You know, Zoom just doesn't play fair. Hold on. It keeps, let me just get rid of. All right. All right.
Okay. And we are going to, I always like to start with PWD, enter, and that's going to remind us where we're at. And if you guys are welcome to stay, by the way, if you want to learn what we're going through, you're welcome to stay. At this point, class is dismissed though. So if you want to head out too, that's completely fine. Okay, so we're in your home directory. So we want to get down to your desktop. But before we know we can get to your desktop, I'm going to run an ls. And that's going to tell us, oh, here are all the things that are in your home folder. So we see desktop is an option there. So we're going to cd space and capital D desktop. And you can hit tab.
Yeah, there we go. You have to give it 2 letters. Okay.
Well, you don't actually always have to give it 2. You just have to give it enough for it to be able to differentiate.
Okay, because it didn't do anything. I kept going plop plop to me when I just
Yeah.
had it with a D. Okay.
Okay, and so now
PWD?
we want to ls again. And we want to get into that CIC code folder. So we're going to cd again. And space and do a C and a tab.
Oh.
And enter. And we are going to run a PWD. And that's going to prove to us that we've made it into your desktop into CIC code. Okay, so now I'm going to send you a link.
So I don't want to rename that, or I mean, the way it is right now isn't bad, and then we're just going to tweak it.
Yep.
Okay.
So if you go into the Zoom chat, oh, I sent you the, oh, that's fine. Copy that URL. You know, let me just Slack it to you because it's probably going to be easier to Slack.
All right. Direct message or to the whole group?
Yep. So if you scroll down over on the left, you're going to see my name pop up.
Mm-hmm.
And go ahead and copy that URL.
Oh.
Just the URL.
Yep.
Okay, and now you're going to go back to your terminal. Bottom left. Yep.
Yep.
And we're going to git, G-I-T, space clone, space, and then paste in that URL. And
right.
hit enter.
Yep.
Okay, and just like that, you have that folder. So we could prove that we have that folder by running ls, but we can also run the command open, and then a space, and then a period. And we're telling it, oh, a period means this folder. So we hit enter there, and up pops Finder, and there's our 2 folders with my code and the code base.
Oh, so instead of careers and code base being the master folder, because it's part of this whole thing. So I could rename CIC code something else if I wanted to, but I don't, it doesn't, what would you name it?
I tend to name my project. I have a folder on my desktop called projects.
Mhm.
And then in projects, I just name it based off of the company that I'm working on or for. And then in there, I create a new folder for every project. So what I would suggest you do is that you move you go into CIC my code. And you can create a new folder in there called module-2. Nope.
Whoops, 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 whoops. In
Not the
there.
code base, the CIC my code,
Okay,
that folder.
and what are we, module 2?
No, okay, hold on. Delete that one. If you hit command and delete, that will delete the folder. Okay, open up my code. And now over in this area, we're going to right click and do new folder. Right click is going to be your 2-finger tap or the bottom right. Yep. And now new folder.
Got it.
And now we're going to call that, hit enter to rename it and call that module-2. Okay, and hit enter. And then what I would do is scroll back over to the left. Don't use the back key. So, well, I guess this is fine. What you want to do is keep my code open. And then you can drag HTML practice 1 into module 2. And you can also drag wireframe practice 1 into module 2. Okay, you can get rid of those other 2 files if you want, the README and the test. You don't need either of those.
Oh,
And so command delete is going to get rid of your files for you. And you're all set.
okay.
So
And-
it's the 2 rules of thumb are don't ever edit anything in code base because that's going to be what the instructors are giving you. And then whenever you start something new, you want to make sure that you have the folders created for it before you go and start creating the files.
Mhm. Right, just
Um,
like making sure you're in the right directory in the terminal, same idea.
Yes. And
Sorry,
so,
the smoke alarm's going off in the kitchen, but
no
anyway.
problem. So
We're alive.
what you may find is that you don't want just the code base and the my code folder. You may have resources or images
Mhm.
or slides you want to store or whatever it is. So you would want to create that outside of the my code folder, but still in CIC code,
Right,
right? And so just organizing that and
right.
whatever system works for you,
Mhm.
if
Yeah.
it's working, then
Yeah.
you'll get no
Right.
complaints from the
I'm
instructors.
very good with hierarchy and organizing. I was a cataloger, so so in this particular instance, do I need to create those folders in the other application, or can I still do it in the desktop, in the
They're all
Finder
linked.
thing?
They're all
Okay.
linked. So if you go back to the terminal right now, and you're gonna
Oops, go bye. Okay. Hold on, it's, I think it has a life of its own. All right,
okay, you can ls and enter, and it's going to show you the 2 folders that we have in there now, right? And so if you cd into CI and then hit tab, and enter and ls, there's your module 2 folder. Right.
and
So
we
these are
did that the other night, and I was trying to keep up with you, and then something happened, and I deleted stuff because I wanted to start over. That's why it went away.
all
Okay.
good. And
Yeah.
and so it's not like Finder is one system and Terminal is another system. What is happening in Finder is when you actually drag that folder in, or when you click on the folder to open it, Finder is actually running the CD command in the terminal, getting the results, and then just showing them for you.
Finder's smart.
Finder is smart. And
It's a developer.
the,
Okay.
the same goes for Git, the same goes for VS Code, all of those things. When you are working in those programs, they are running the equivalent of what would run in the terminal, and that's how they're all interlinked.
Fantastic. So I can just quit terminal, or do I need to go move myself somewhere else?
you are all set.
All right, so I can quit terminal. And after you've helped a few other people, I know we were gonna kind of look at that Envision thing again if we could,
Sure.
because that's kind of been a bane of my existence. It's been holding me back. So, all right, I will just mute. Where'd you go? All right, and I'll.
All right. Who can I help next?
Can you help me? Maybe?
I can. Go for it.
All right. Well, I never got past the first thing we were doing, which was because I kind of got lost on the folder making.
Okay.
I can't even, everything closed on me, so I'm not sure. Before you showed us just now all the stuff with the Bootstrap, the thing we were doing before,
Yes.
which
You could say you didn't get it.
ha ha. I wouldn't. But yes, that is correct. I did not get it.
So if you share your screen, let's figure out where you're at.
Okay, hold on. What's that little share? Sometimes it's on this bar and I don't even know how to use that bar thing, but okay. Oh, share.
Okay. So did you get Kraken open?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, this is
so-
where I kind of got lost.
Okay. So what happened is you've got your repository created and you've got two folders on your desktop, one for the code base and one for CIC. Let's pop
Yes.
open that CIC folder on your desktop just so I can see what's in it.
So just go to it on my desktop.
Yep, and double click the CIC one, not the code base.
Why does that cover everything? Is there a better way? That's the 3-finger method. Oh, well. You want the CIC?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, and so we want to be careful. I already have one red flag here. You've got a code base on your desktop and you've got a code base in the CIC folder.
Yeah.
So you probably only want the code base that is in the CIC folder. So I would recommend deleting the code base that is on your desktop.
Yeah, I think I actually maybe did it twice. So just delete that.
Yep.
Okay. All
Okay.
right.
So
Gone.
from here, we're going to eventually want to get all of the stuff into my code stuff. And I'm guessing that's the repository that you created in Gitkraken.
Yes, the one
Okay.
from today.
Okay, so pop open my code stuff and we should have like a README file in there. Yeah, okay.
Yep.
All right, so you can close this window. I got everything I needed from here. And let's
Okay.
go back to Gitkraken.
Yep.
Okay, and so let's click on that WIP up at the top. And
Here?
that stands for work in progress. Click in here, like in that area. Okay, and so what that's showing us is that you changed myfile.txt and we just need to stage it so we can commit it. And so
How do I know it's showing me that? Like, I don't.
Yeah, so right here, unstaged files, and then it says myfile.txt.
Okay.
Right, and so like this, think of it as like a 3-step process. Anything that you changed is going to show up in unstaged. Anything
Okay.
that you would like to tell it to commit, you need to add those files to get it to show up in the staged files. And then when you're ready to commit it, you're going to add in some little message and move it into commit. So what we're going to do is if you kind of hover over myfile.txt, there's going to be a little stage button that shows up on the right.
Oops. I can't see with the pictures.
There should be a little minus button. Yeah.
Oh, I see it. Okay, got it. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so hover over this.
Yep. Click into Gitkraken once to activate the window.
Anywhere?
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Oh,
And
I
now
see.
you can stage file.
Okay.
And so
So
go
my-
ahead and do that.
Click it.
Yep. And you just added the file from your, oh, I'm sorry, over on the right, it says stage file.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And so now you staged it. So staging it is adding it. And so
Yep.
now you need to tell it some message before you can take your staged changes and commit them into the repository. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down to summary,
Yep.
and we're going to say, you know, first edit or something like that. Make sure you're in summary and not in description. Okay.
Oh, they're different?
Yes.
Ooh, okay.
So go ahead and say, you know, first change or whatever. And then commit.
Down here.
Yep. Okay. Now you committed it, which is good. Now that is just committed on local. So if we were to go to github.com right now, that commit wouldn't show up. And that's what it's trying to show you here, right? Is that on your computer, that's where you're at. But over on GitHub, because that's your GitHub profile picture, you're one commit behind.
Okay.
And so what we're going to do is we're going to push your commit up to GitHub.
Okay.
So it's going to think about it and it's going to push it up. And now you see this is on the same.
And they're
both your-
together. Yep.
Yep. And so now if we go to github.com in Chrome, and click on my code stuff over on the left and pop open myfile.txt, we can see your code is there.
Okay. So this thing, Git Kraken, is like, I don't, GitHub is holding all this stuff up somewhere else.
In the
These
remote.
are the same thing. These are the same thing. One is somewhere far away and one is right here on my computer, basically.
Exactly, right. And so what Git Kraken is doing is they're just giving you a user interface that allows you to do all of those actions. So if you go back to this, let me pull up this diagram again. And I'm gonna bump you from screen sharing.
Okay.
Sharing. Share this. Okay, so you can see my mouse, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so remote is GitHub. This whole white square is GitHub. Local is your computer, right? And so whenever we want to move between one of these like areas your code lives, there's some action verb that does it, right? So when you're working on your files, you're just making the changes. You're like la-di-da-di-da, and that isn't changing anything in the repository, right?
Yeah.
So in order to get that change to happen in the repository, we need to tell it what we want to commit. Well, but there may be multiple things that we want to commit. And so what we're going to do is we're going to add any of the files that we changed to our staging environment.
Yep.
Right. And so that's when we hit the stage file button. That was the add command. Then
Is staging like a holding stuff? Like why is it 3 steps?
It's a staging thing because it is a holding thing because we can't, if we added and it immediately committed, we would have a bunch of different commits. So what we want to do is we're saying like, hey, we're getting ready. We want to add these couple files to the commit. And then I may review another file or two. And then I go, all right, I want to add this file next. And basically it is a in-memory kind of, this is what I'm getting ready to commit. And so that's why you're staging the file, right? You're staging the file so it is ready to be committed, right? So like think about it as staging a house, right? When you stage a house to sell it on the real estate market, you don't plop a piece of furniture down and then, you know, say, hey, buyers, I have this house. And then you don't go in and add another piece of furniture and then go, hey, buyers, come over and look at this house. I've added another thing, right? You stage the whole house together. And so you're going to add all of that furniture. And then when you are ready for people to look at it, you commit to that stage. You go, all right, I've got all my furniture in here, shove it into the repository, right?
Yep.
Put this house on the market. Well, that house is now on the market, but only on your computer. So you need to do the next step, which is get that house up onto GitHub.
Yep.
But GitHub sometimes gets cranky and goes, other people are looking at your house and have made changes. You need to pool. You need to get any changes that I have, get them on your computer first. So you pull those down, and then you can go, all right, I've got the latest ones, push. Take my code, shove it back up to GitHub. And now your local and your remote, your repository on your computer and GitHub are in sync.
Yep. It's kind of like if you were writing a paper and if I wrote 2 sentences and we were collaborating and you wrote 2, I have to send it up because you wouldn't know that I wrote 2.
Exactly.
And I'm also doing the commit part because I need to say I added 2 sentences about the house selling, and then you want to write your piece about showing the house, and you've got to tell me that's what you did.
Exactly.
So basically it's because you're constantly editing and you're keeping track of the edits.
Yes.
Is why you're always writing the, okay.
Yes. And keeping track of the edits is what Git does really, really well. The other thing that Git does that we didn't cover is what happens when there's a merge conflict. What happens when I work on the same sentence that you worked on, right? And so
Yeah.
Git has a built-in mechanism called when you merge your code together, it's going to go, whoa, you both edited this line of code and I have no idea what's going on here. And so you resolve that merge conflict by telling it, oh, I want this piece of code, get rid of that one. And then that code merges in. But the 2 kind of medium level complexity things of Git are branches and merge conflicts. And then there's a whole other world that like even I am not familiar with Git. But the idea is to expose you to this early. So when you go, oh man, like I'm so frustrated, like my website was all great and then I added this one line of code and now it's all broken. How do I just get it back? And you can't undo out of it. And you're like, that's what Git is super helpful for, because you can say, just go back to this last commit and it wipes out any code changes you made and lets you get to that point.
It's like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Going back to an older version that worked instead of the newer one that's broken. Okay.
Yes. Right. Because you didn't commit to that working version that you were, right? Like I know it sounds cheesy, but like if you think of those action verbs, like, oh, commit, that sounds pretty serious, right? Like that means I definitely want this to happen. But in order for me to be able to commit to it, I have to add in the files that I'm telling you I'm ready to commit for.
Yeah. Okay. I guess I get it. I think I get it.
Cool. Yeah,
For now.
and Git Kraken is just one of the ways you can do it. You can do it in the terminal. You can do it in VS Code. Some people swear by the terminal method. Whatever works for you. We just wanted to show you a couple different ways and then be like, however you want to do it, fine.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I guess I'm good enough for now. I'm definitely going to rewatch the video tomorrow and do more of this and the next thing.
Cool. And I think Karen is hoping to just like touch on a couple things tomorrow and then leave it open for questions. So I don't think she's got like a very code heavy day tomorrow where she's like throwing new stuff at you.
Okay, good. All right. Thank you very much.
No problem. Good night.
Okay. Bye.
All right. Who can I help next? Phobelia, go for it.
Thank you. I had a problem with getting into Git Kraken.
Okay.
It's like I couldn't log in. Oh, sure. Oops. Okay.
Sorry. I always forget to stop sharing.
Did it share?
Yep.
I always forget to do
Okay,
that.
you're in.
Okay.
Okay, so let's click
So
on.
this is what I did.
Yep, we're going to click on a hosted repo on GitHub.
Okay.
Okay, and then we're going to say connect to GitHub. And it's like Git Kraken has a bad memory. Connect to GitHub again. and that's going to pop open Chrome. So we're going to hit continue authorization.
Okay.
And then we're going to scroll down and hit authorize or allow.
Right here?
Yep.
Okay. This is where it got weird.
Okay, and now you need your
Oh.
GitHub password.
I have a password. Let me see.
You definitely have a password because it didn't ask you to log in until this step. So I know you definitely have a GitHub account. So let's try clicking confirm password and see if it takes that.
And it did not.
Okay. Any other guesses on the password before we reset it?
Let me see.
You got lucky. You got it.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. So we can close this window. Okay. And so you've got everything connected now. So we're going to go back to exit preferences.
Okay. Oops.
Okay. And we're going to click on a hosted repo on GitHub. Okay. And then we're going to click on your account and click on your username. Then for the name, we're going to type in CIC my code with dashes or uppercase letters, no spaces.
All dashes?
Yeah, that's fine. And now we are going to tell it where to clone. So we're going to go to browse. And we are going to go, where would you like it? In your documents or on your desktop?
Probably on my desktop.
Okay, so let's go to desktop. And then hit open. Okay, and now we can hit create repository and clone.
Okay, create repository and clone.
Bottom right green button.
Oh.
Okay, and you're going to see a new folder pop up on your desktop, and you're good to go from here.
Oh, okay. That's it?
That's it. So if you want to rewatch the video, we go through kind of practicing committing and adding the files and staging it and all of that kind of stuff. But you're all set up. You've got your repository here. So, you know, you can start creating the files that we created and getting the code working and all of that kind of stuff. But Git-wise, you're all set up.
Okay, thanks, Max.
No problem.
Oops.
All right, our numbers are dwindling. Who's up? I think we're saving Dominique for last because she's got a fun SSH credentials issue.
Actually, I think I fixed it. I think it's working now. I just troubleshoot the mess out of it.
You got it. See,
we made some progress, but then I got stuck again. So
yeah,
and then you get unstuck, and then you get hopelessly stuck, and you want to drop out of
new errors. Okay, it was a new error.
Yes, we're celebrating a lot of them lately.
Yeah, I just pretty much just made sure everything was like out of it.
Kind of environment before. It's like, wow.
The thing that happened to her has never happened to me before.
Unfortunately, it has happened to me over and over and over again, and it's one of those things that you just have to take 20 minutes to get through it. And like,
so weird.
No matter what, you are going to go through the exact same steps that I'm going to go through to get it working. You know, like there's no magic bullet. There's just like a different error message, copy it into Google, figure out what they say, try it, get the different error message, and you're like, is this a better error message? Like, did I just make progress or did I go backwards? No way of knowing. And then all of a sudden it works and you go, oh, it's working. You know, like you get so used to getting different error messages that all of a sudden you stop getting error messages. So good work.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, guys. I really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
We're all, I mean, I've been going like, oh my God, I'm falling behind. I'm not handing homework and I get this stuff, but I haven't been able to do it. So we're good. We're good. We got this, right?
We can do
Tanya,
this.
can I help you with something?
Got this. We have got this. All right.
I'm sorry. So I spent this time listening because I was going to go back to the video and just do the steps myself. I made it pretty far along, but I just wasn't able to keep up with the commits because my folders were interrupting, but I just shared folders between my Macs, so I won't have that issue again. So I think I'm okay. I think it'll benefit me to start from the very, very beginning. So I'd rather just watch the video and go through there, you know, go through steps that way.
Sure.
Oh, shoot, Latonia, I just saw your message.
No, it's okay. I mean,
sorry.
No, it's okay. I can get going. That way you all can focus on the other stuff.
We can break out if you want to, if you need help. I don't mind. I'm here.
Okay. All right.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, give me 1 second. Let me
take your time.
Do another.
Good night, everybody else. I may not see you.
Good night, sweetie.
I'm gonna make you
Hey, have a
host,
good night.
Caitlin, just in
Okay.
case everyone else drops out.
Okay, perfect. Oh.
Any other questions? Carolyn, you have questions?
It's the thing with the envision.
Okay, go ahead and
if someone else wants to go first, I can hang.
I think you're the last one, so go ahead and share your screen.
Okay, let me do that. Hold on. I can find where I had that. Let's see, my browser. Go to, just bear with me a moment, please.
No problem.
I should have had this ready if I'm so organized. Where was it? Okay, here we go. Envision sign in. Okay. And I'm going to move this to a new window. No, I'm not. All right, let me just minimize that one. And got this one. All right, now go back here and my fingers aren't used to doing the workout like this. Okay. So should I click on desktop one or?
Desktop one, yes.
Okay. Because that will bring everybody together, right?
Yes.
All right, and that's not what we want. There, I got rid of the, all right, let me make this a little smaller. All right.
Okay, and so let's clear out that password and type in the password we know we reset it to yesterday.
And that is actually correct. That is the one that I reset it to.
Okay, and so when you sign in, it still says you're locked out?
No, I didn't get that. It got me to a screen. Oh, this might be from yesterday's. Hold on. Let me get rid of that because it's using the old one. Okay. All right. It's bigger here. All right. So I come back to this screen and I want to try to sign in. And I'll type it again just to be sure.
Okay.
But let's see. Make sure I got the right one here. I'm going to get a bit bored and honest. That was the one that got. I never should have done this before class the other night. That's what got me in trouble. Oh, I know what it is anyway. I remember. Okay. Oh, stop it.
All right, we are in.
But I get this stupid team screen
So
again.
go ahead and hit create a team.
Okay. All right.
Okay, and the team name, just type in your name. Okay, and then the domain, if you just click in there, you can type in your name again. Just without spaces.
Like that?
Yep.
Okay.
And then skip up at the top. And then create over on the right. And for freehand. And you can name that, you know, wireframe or test or whatever you want.
Mhm. Can I have spaces in this one?
Yes, yes.
What are you doing?
And then create. And then you should be able to watch the video from yesterday. Click on blank there. And now you're all called up to where the video was yesterday.
Okay, because I was watching it, but then, okay, I'm cooking. This is great. I'm ready to go in Envision. And it had that screen with the Teams thing. I thought, well, I don't want Teams, but I guess it doesn't matter.
It doesn't. Yeah.
So now I can move forward because I get this stuff, you know, it's like kind of all over the place like confetti and it's all kind of drifting down, but I've got to be able to do it. And this is great.
All good.
Thank you so much. I mean, these like little things that are catching me. And that's just the nature of it. So thank you.
It very much is. Yeah. It's and the good news is you get better at powering through them.
Oh, well, you know my story. So I've already learned like basically how to power through some pretty serious stuff. So I think I can do this. And I have to remind myself I can.
Yes. Yes.
You know, because this is nothing compared,
Yes.
but it is something. So, oh yeah, no, that's all of you instructors and TA, you're amazing. You're wonderful. And I can tell you love what you're doing. You're so good at explaining. You're so patient. So thank you.
No problem. All right. I'll see ya.
Have a great night now.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye.